calls me googly eyes.
You know you're beautiful, right? You know that?
Even you are beautiful. I got bullied for wearing glasses. Share if you're against bullying.
We put it out there, just took off. 3 million people have shared this post. Don't let bullies get you down. I stand with you. The whole family's wearing glasses. I wear glasses and I'm proud.
I even have the army on my team.
All the kind comments brought my child joy. I don't feel thank you is enough.
Thanks.
A single ember that escapes from a wildfire can travel more than a mile. That single ember can ignite and destroy your home or even your community. You can't control where that ember will land, only what happens when it does. Get Fire Adapted now at fireadapted.org.
I wanted to find a bank with a purpose. I wanted to find a place that would take my money and not use it to cause the financial crisis, but to fix the financial crisis and to help end income inequality.
The people that we employ are usually clients right off the streets. They don't have an account, but Amalgamated is willing to get that started for them.
Their reputation of supporting the working man, I think, speaks for itself. This is a bank that cares for their customers, and I appreciate that.
We were able to access a construction loan through the bank's programs, and that loan has helped us house 28 families in the community.
Amalgamated is a bank that was started for and about working people.
Many of our customers have a deep commitment to advocating for social and economic justice. We share that commitment, and we're not afraid to stand up and say that we need to change some of the way that the country does business.
I grew up in the housing projects of Cleveland. I didn't even know that life could be any better than it was. Education for me has been a way to get away from the agony of what was normal life. I want to be able to impact the community, not just look back on where I came from, but to reach back to where I came from and pull some people up with me. My name is David, and I am your dividend.
The most important issue on this planet right now is to protect and conserve biodiversity in the world's oceans. And I don't think people realize just how intimate our connection is with the oceans themselves. Not only do they provide the very foundation of life and control our weather, but life just simply could not exist without a healthy ocean. The real problem, though, is apathy. It's all out of sight, it's all out of mind, and people don't even think about it. But it doesn't matter whether you live in Peoria or on the coast. The fact is, whatever happens in the ocean affects all life forms on the planet Earth. If the oceans die, then civilization collapses. We all die. We cannot live on this planet without the oceans. This is, in fact, not the planet Earth. It's the planet ocean, but because we're a land-dwelling species, we refer to it as Earth. But it is the planet ocean, and the oceans are the heart and the foundation of all life on the planet.
taught him how to hit a baseball.
Just like that. Say hi!
How to hit a receiver.
Nice.
The strike zone. The net. You taught him how to hit the upper corner. You even taught him how to hit the open man. But how much time have you spent teaching him what not to hit?
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
I grew up in the housing projects of Cleveland. I didn't even know that life could be any better than it was. Education for me has been a way to get away from the agony of what was normal life. I want to be able to impact the community, not just look back on where I came from, but to reach back to where I came from and pull some people up with me. My name is David, and I am your dividend.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
A single ember that escapes from a wildfire can travel more than a mile. That single ember can ignite and destroy your home or even your community. You can't control where the ember will land, only what happens when it does. Get Fire Adapted now at fireadapted.org.
Columbine, Virginia Tech,
Tucson,
Aurora,
Fort Hood, Oak Creek,
Newtown,
Newtown,
Newtown.
Newtown.
How many more?
How many more? How many more colleges? How many more classrooms?
How many more movie theaters?
How many more houses of faith?
How many more shopping malls?
How many more street corners?
How many more?
How many more?
Enough.
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 Demand a plan.
Right now. As a mom.
As a dad. As a friend. As a husband.
As a wife.
As an American.
As an American.
As an American.
As a human being.
For the children of Sandy Hook.
Demand a plan. No more lists of names. It's not too soon.
It's too late.
Now is the time.
Before we all know someone who loved someone on that list.
No more lists.
No more.
Who they might have been. No more.
If we had just done something yesterday. It's time.
We can do better than this.
We can do better than this.
It's time.
It's time.
It's time for our leaders to act.
Demand a plan. Right now.
Right now.
You! Demand it!
Enough.
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 broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Good morning and welcome to The Bill Press Show. Sabrina Siddiqui here, political reporter at The Guardian. I'm filling in for Bill on this Wednesday morning. It's great to be back in the hosting chair the morning after a big night in the presidential race. Big wins for Ted Cruz and Bernie Sanders in the Wisconsin primary. We'll be talking about that with our great lineup of guests. And before we get into the show, I want to say hi to my friends in the studio. First of whom is Peter Ogburn, my favorite executive producer in
Hi,
DC.
Sabrina. Oh, that's so sweet of you to say. Is that true?
Yeah, I think it is.
You know, there are a lot of executive producers in DC.
Yeah, there are a lot of them.
And to know that I'm your favorite.
Specifically EP, like I had.
To know that I'm your favorite warms my heart.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking before we began about me potentially like killing you, like murdering you. So this
literally
is
murdering.
This is an improvement from a big 2 minutes.
That turned pretty quickly.
It turned pretty quickly.
Thank you.
And then we have Jamie Benson running the board. Hello.
Good morning,
Jamie.
Sabrina. Thanks so much for getting it right.
I know. But listen, for those of you who...
The anticipation of whether or not Sabrina is going to say Jamie's name right.
For those of you who don't know...
has been building.
I once erroneously referred to him as Jesse.
Once.
No, but then after that, it was deliberate.
Okay.
After that, that was...
Right.
That was his name.
Sure.
And now we're best friends.
I have the power. I
Look
get
at
to
that.
decide what your name will be.
She's the decider.
Ray Rogers is screening your calls. Hello, Ray. And Cyprian Bolding making us all look good on camera. There he is.
Customary greeting.
Customary greeting, which better be reserved only for me. I don't know if
he's the only one. You're the only one he comes up
I don't know
for.
if he's just handing that out now.
No.
Okay.
No, you're the only one he makes an appearance for.
So we had a big night last night that we're going to get into, but first...
This is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple of other little stories making news, big news out of Walmart. Our friends at the Humane Society announced yesterday that Walmart is going to get rid of cage confinement for hens. Right, this is a thing because they have their own egg operation at Walmart, and they keep them in cages. And so they're saying that, the times have changed. They see that is cruel, and they are going to get rid of cages for all of their hens. Now, this is a big, big deal because Walmart, it should be noted, they're responsible for 25% of all groceries sold in the United States.
What?
Think about that.
I would not have thought that.
25% of all groceries sold in the United States come from Walmart. But isn't that amazing?
A lot of super centers.
It's remarkable.
That's exactly right. It's the super centers that they have, like in the middle of nowhere, that people flock to and stock up on. So they said that they are going to get rid of cages for their hens, and all of their eggs will come from cage-free sources.
I'm all about cage-free hens.
I am too, and they said that the policy will be fully in place by the year 2025.
This is Obama's America, guys.
Oh, welcome to Obama's America. Here we go. Congratulations to the UConn Huskies women's basketball team. They won again last night for their 4th consecutive national championship, which is unbelievable.
Give someone else a chance.
Well, look, they're the best team. They have been for a long, long time. I mean, President Obama jokes about these teams that keep making return visits to the White House under his presidency. This is another one that he's going to have to contend with, the UConn women Huskies. They won 82-51 last night against Syracuse. It was not close at all. So congratulations to them. They finished the season at 38-0, 0 losses all season long. That is the 6th unbeaten season in program history, and that extends their winning streak to 75 games.
Sounds about right.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable what they're doing. And if you live in San Francisco and you want to have a baby, it just got a lot easier to get some time off. San Francisco has become the first city in the nation to require businesses to provide fully paid parental leave. Now that's awesome. That's a really cool thing. This is going to go into full effect in 2017, and it will give parents, male or female, 6 weeks of fully paid leave, because they say that, it's important to be there with your child.
It's important to be there with your child.
And, a lot of people, can't necessarily afford to take that much time off.
And especially in a city like San Francisco.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. You can't afford to miss any paychecks. So they say 6 weeks, by law, you get that, and it will be paid.
It's a big thing on the presidential campaign
It is.
as well.
Paid family leave has been a pivotal issue. On the Democratic side, certainly. On the Republican side, you don't hear about it as much.
This is an interesting way that they sort of split this up, by the way, because the businesses are going to have to share the cost of the parental leave with the state. So the state is going to pay for some of it, but the businesses also have to make up for it.
Well, that's actually interesting because that's actually a merger of the Republican proposals where you incentivize paid family leave by having businesses, get some kind of tax deduction.
Yeah,
and
I think it's cool.
Obviously the government plays a role too. It's something called compromise.
Yeah, look at what we did.
What is that?
And it's San Francisco.
I know. In liberal utopia, San Francisco. All right, guys. So, Wisconsin primary night in which the frontrunners in both parties did not have a very good night. Ted Cruz trounced Donald Trump by double digits, and Bernie Sanders also scoring a double-digit victory over Hillary Clinton. Both Sanders and Cruz adding the majority, well, I should say definitely Cruz adding the majority of delegates from Wisconsin to his tally. It being a winner takes most primary contest. But in the Democratic one, Sanders gained 45 delegates to Clinton's 31. A little more proportional. So probably not something that really changes the trajectory of the race. But I don't know, Peter. I think on the Democratic side, it certainly draws out this primary even further.
It's interesting because, I don't want to say that this race is over. It's far from over, but it's certainly going in the direction of Hillary Clinton getting the nomination. And Bernie folks for quite some time now are saying that you're prematurely writing off our candidate, right? You're prematurely writing off
the media is missing.
And that the media narrative is missing. And you know what? I think that there might actually be some truth to that. I mean, he's won a lot here recently. What is it? He's won the last 7 out of 8 primaries, if you count Wisconsin.
If you listen to Bernie Sanders' speech last night, he points to that. Why don't we take a quick listen to what he had to say about his performance?
With our victory tonight in Wisconsin, we have now won 7 out of 8 of the last caucuses and primaries.
Yeah, so Bernie Sanders and Bernie supporters really do have a leg to stand on when they say that this race isn't over yet.
I think, and it might not be.
Because something's happening, right?
Sure.
Something's happening.
Well, the question also becomes, the more drawn out this is, and if it's going to end or conclude with Hillary Clinton wrapping up the nomination maybe just later than expected, how much does this leave her bruised going into a general election? Now, obviously, voters tend to reset then, but you heard Republicans really, and they've been hitting this home each time she loses to Bernie Sanders or has a competitive contest with him, that they were using the same line. She has now lost 7 of the last 8 primary or caucus events. And what does that mean about her as a candidate? It means that she's unlikable. It means that people don't trust her, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Here's the thing that I think Hillary Clinton supporters should sort of look at. Why is it that Bernie Sanders is doing so well, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that he's a real serious imminent threat to Hillary Clinton's nomination, right? Maybe he is, I don't know. But something's going on. There's a reason that she can't put this away. Why? What is it about Bernie's message that's so good, or what is it that it's about Hillary's message that's not so good?
And I think message is so key.
Yeah.
I mean, Bernie has a lot of confidence in his message, and I think that one of the exit poll figures that came out of Wisconsin last night that we've seen in other states too is that a majority of primary voters said that they were more inspired by Bernie Sanders and his message than they were by Hillary Clinton. And as time and time again, polling has also borne out in both parties that electability is not top at the top of the list, which
Right.
is the case that Hillary Clinton was for a while making against Bernie. I think they've realized that it doesn't resonate. It's not resonating. And this similarly on the Republican side, Donald Trump's opponents have made it against him. Electability is certainly not why he lost Wisconsin, which is also an interesting point. I think since we're talking about Hillary Clinton and if she is the nominee, how much does this hurt her in general? I think one thing that they are sure of, if you're the Hillary Clinton campaign, is that this has now become a choice between Donald Trump and Ted Cruz.
Yeah.
And I think they're happy to run against either.
Yeah,
of
I think
two.
they are. I mean, I think in some ways they're happier to run against Ted Cruz than Donald Trump.
Absolutely. I think that they don't believe if there was any talk of Donald Trump having the Bernie crossover appeal, bringing in disenfranchised voters or swaying independents who feel economically disadvantaged or left out of the recovery, that's not Ted Cruz's real strong suit. And not to mention just that, Hillary Clinton, there is a fact that she's only ever going to be so popular. She's a well-known figure, right? There's not a lot of people who are seeing her, except for, millennials, maybe to an extent. But even then, some of them are old enough to remember her, at least as children, her husband's administration. So when you're getting to know, the more I think that people get to know Ted Cruz, if you listen to what we'll talk a little bit more about this after the break. If you listen to what Democrats are increasingly saying, it's that they feel confident they can tie him just as easily to Donald Trump and to everything Donald Trump has said.
Let me ask you this: so last night, was there a real shift in momentum with Cruz winning Wisconsin, because he won it in a fairly big way?
Well,
and so this narrative leading up to this has all been Trump, 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 and then we sort of saw it start to turn in the last week or so because of the bad week he had last week.
What I think was significant was that we talk and we've sat here time and again discussing every controversial statement Donald Trump has made. I mean, this has been since he launched his campaign declaring that Mexican immigrants are quote unquote rapists and killers. His words that sparked a lot the initial controversy in his announcement speech alone. I mean, every week, several times a week, we've come back to this table and said, this is it. This is the moment. Yeah. Now, for once, he actually had a bad week that translated in the polls, where he comments on abortion, initially saying that women should be penalized if they have abortions where the practice is illegal, or his campaign manager, Corey Lewandowski, being charged with battery against former Breitbart reporter Michelle Fields. This potentially his ugly battle over wives he went after Heidi Cruz and how she looks. This seems to actually have had an impact, and you're seeing Ted Cruz gaining nationally. And because Ted Cruz had an overwhelming victory, I think it could change the trajectory of the race. But let's talk about that a little bit more after taking a short break. Keep on watching The Bill Press Show. We'll be back shortly.
Your place to talk about the 2016 election. This is The Bill Press Show.
You taught him how to hit a baseball.
Just like that. Set high!
How to hit a receiver.
Nice.
The strike zone. The net. You taught him how to hit the upper corner. You even taught him how to hit the open man. But how much time have you spent teaching him what not to hit?
Calls me googly eyes.
You know you're beautiful, right? You know that?
Even you are beautiful. I got bullied for wearing glasses. Share if you're against bullying.
We put it out there, just took off. 3 million people have shared this post. Don't let bullies get you down. I stand with you. My whole family's wearing glasses. I wear glasses and I'm proud.
I even have the army on my team.
All the kind comments brought my child joy. I don't feel thank you is enough.
Thanks.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
I grew up in the housing projects of Cleveland. I didn't even know that life could be any better than it was. Education for me has been a way to get away from the agony of what was normal life. I want to be able to impact the community, not just look back on where I came from, but to reach back to where I came from and pull some people up with me. My name is David, and I am your dividend.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the Bill Press Show. Sabrina Siddiqui here, political reporter at The Guardian, filling in for Bill this morning. We were just talking about the Wisconsin primary. Of course, Ted Cruz and Bernie Sanders scoring big wins over the prohibitive frontrunners in each party, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. And we were talking also, Peter, about the impact of Cruz's win in particular. But first, I want to take a call from Ike in North Charleston, who's on the line. Good morning, Ike.
Hey, good morning, Miss Sabrina. And let me just also say good morning to the crew, to Ray and Sippy Cup and Jesse and Perry.
What's up, Mike?
Hey, buddy. Listen, the one thing I want to know about Ted Cruz is he on the D.C. Madam list? The other thing I want to know is Donald Trump on the Panama Papers leak. The other thing I want to know, or the other thing the Bernie supporters want to know, is how is it that these superdelegates, when the votes are being cast for Hillary, are going to vote for Hillary anyway, which they're upset about. And when it comes to Hillary, she's not Bill. She doesn't have the charisma, and that's why she can't put it away.
Yeah, this is one of the points people have raised often is, in what ways is Bill Clinton, a liability, both in terms of, aspects of his tenure that they would rather forget, or where public opinion has evolved, or certainly on the progressive side, the trade deals, NAFTA has been a constant point of contention. And then there's the other kind of facet of it where even the positive pieces of his legacy, like his personal charisma, can sometimes be a liability because there's a very clear contrast in the eyes of at least some. That she doesn't have the same skills, that she's going to be compared to him for better or for worse.
Yeah, I think she is her own person, and she's carved out a wildly successful career for herself in politics. But at the same time, I think a lot of people see that she's sort of a more old school type of politician, maybe. And I'm not saying that Bernie is like, some flash in the pan. He's been around for a long time. But I think that the old mentality of retail politics, I think if there's anything that we've learned from this election, is you kind of have to throw them out the window.
Right.
And I think that she's still practicing a lot of that stuff.
Right.
And it hasn't helped her. In fact, it's hurt her a lot. I mean, this should have been, right, like we remember in the lead up, it's going to, the
There's
Democratic
no Barack Obama.
field is going to
In fact,
just
a lot of
clear.
people didn't even run quite clearly. Because
Right. There are a lot of people who
Hillary
didn't run
Clinton.
because Hillary Clinton was going to clear the field. That's what one possible person that was going to run, I forget who it was now, said that's going to happen, just clear the field for Hillary. And maybe that wasn't such a great idea,
Right.
for Democrats, but...
Yeah, and I still think that one of the problems, like I said, is that, some of it is unfair. She's a known entity.
Oh, yeah.
And so you come with decades of public service and life before the public eye. And the media has always had this fascination with the Clintons, but specifically with Hillary Clinton. I mean, you remember when she was First Lady, and Ruby Kramer had a great profile in BuzzFeed a couple months ago about how Hillary Clinton wants to talk about love and kindness. And she stopped talking about this for a long time because as First Lady, she was ridiculed for saying something that people thought sounded, too fluffy, and they didn't really get it. She was talking about simple things like, why can't we just love each other and get along and be kinder to one another? She was having this existential conversation that I think people didn't really see, and now that the politics are so ugly, it's a little bit easier to drive home that message.
That's a good point.
But, I think there's been this adversarial relationship from the very beginning. I think we've seen that manifest itself again.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that her campaign has been flawless by any means,
No,
but I think
but I
it's
know
just
what you
that
mean.
built-in, reality. And again, it goes back to, though, that they're going to face, if they are the nominee, either Ted Cruz or Donald Trump. Before we take a break, quickly, I just want to play this clip from President Barack Obama talking about Ted Cruz, because let's all remember that this is who the establishment has rallied around now.
It's not just Mr. Trump's proposals. I mean, you're also hearing concerns about Mr. Cruz's proposals, which in some ways are just as draconian when it comes to immigration, for example.
Precisely. Ted Cruz also does not support even legal status for undocumented immigrants, let alone citizenship. He's come out against birthright citizenship, and he would like to send police to patrol Muslim neighborhoods in America. That's the alternative to Donald Trump, guys. We're going to take another break. Keep on watching The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.
The most important issue on this planet right now is to protect and conserve biodiversity in the world's oceans. And I don't think people realize just how intimate our connection is with the oceans themselves. Not only do they provide the very foundation of life and control our weather, but life just simply could not exist without a healthy ocean. The real problem, though, is apathy. It's all out of sight, it's all out of mind, and people don't even think about it. But it doesn't matter whether you live in Peoria or on the coast. The fact is, whatever happens in the ocean affects all life forms on the planet Earth. If the oceans die, then civilization collapses. We all die. We cannot live on this planet without the oceans. This is, in fact, not the planet Earth. It's the planet ocean, but because we're a land-dwelling species, we refer to it as Earth. But it is the planet ocean, and the oceans are the heart and the foundation of all life on the planet.
A single ember that escapes from a wildfire can travel more than a mile. That single ember can ignite and destroy your home or even your community. You can't control where that ember will land, only what happens when it does. Get fire adapted now at fireadapted.org.
Columbine.
Virginia Tech.
Tucson.
Aurora.
Fort Hood. Oak Creek.
Newtown.
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 How many more? How many more? How many more colleges? How many more classrooms?
How many more movie theaters?
How many more houses of faith?
How many more shopping malls?
How many more street corners?
How many more?
How many more?
Enough.
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 Demand a plan.
Right now.
As a mom.
As a dad.
As a friend. As a husband.
As a wife.
As an American.
As an American.
As an American.
As a human being.
For the children of Sandy Hook.
Demand a plan. No more lists of names. It's not too soon.
It's too late.
Now is the time.
Before we all know someone who loved someone on that list.
No more lists.
No more.
Who they might have been. No more.
If we had just done something yesterday.
It's time.
We can do better than this.
We can do better than this.
It's time.
It's time.
It's time for our leaders to act.
Demand a plan. Right now.
Right now.
You! Demand it!
Enough.
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 Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the Bill Press Show. Sabrina Siddiqui here, filling in for Bill this morning. We've been talking about the Wisconsin primary last night and taking your calls at 866-55-PRESS. That's 866-557-7377. And we are joined on the line now by Rose from Ligonier, Indiana. Good morning, Rose.
Hi, morning, guys.
Hey, Rose.
Hi, Peter. My comment is with Hillary. It's just, she is like been tapped, or it feels that it's just her turn to be president. And she would not have moved on a lot of these things if it would not have been Bernie moving things more to the left. She, I don't know, just doesn't come across with the authenticity and the drive that Bernie or Obama had. She needs to have, I don't know, a little more oomph, and she's taking it for granted like she started out in 2008.
You know, I think what Rose said has been one of the central problems that Hillary has faced on authenticity. You know, they kind of checked. They did check.
Okay.
They had a checklist
Yes.
where it's like, okay, we got to move on trade. Okay, we got to move on immigration. Okay, we got to move on gay marriage, and they haven't been able to still stem the swell of support for Bernie, or the enthusiasm, I should say.
Here's a great example of what I think makes progressives mad with Hillary Clinton. And this happened this week. Bernie Sanders and Martin O'Malley at the time were both said we need a $15 minimum wage in this country. $15. That's what we need.
I knew you were going to bring that up.
I know. I know. It's worth bringing up.
It's a fair point.
It's worth bringing up. And she called it pie in the sky. Her words. She says pie in the sky, and settled for a $12 an hour minimum wage. And said there's no way we can get a $15 minimum wage done. It can't happen. Won't happen. And yet, earlier this week, when California and New York both at the same time had signing ceremonies to announce that they had a $15 minimum wage in their state, who showed up in New York to take a victory lap
with Andrew Cuomo,
and stand there next to Andrew Cuomo and say that this is a good thing.
Hillary Clinton.
Hillary Clinton.
Ahead
She
of the
showed
New York
up.
primary, of course.
Yeah.
On
Now-
April 19th.
Now, I'm
or something.
not out for Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton. I'm just watching this as genuinely as an independent observer. But that is a little transparent.
Right. I think it's the different. Everyone's a politician in the race. I think some of the moments, the TPP is probably another where she's called that the gold standard. As Secretary of State, she was very involved in the initial negotiations. Then, of course, under pressure, wanting to get the endorsement of major labor unions, decided to come out against at least the trade deal for now, after much delay in taking a position. So I think it's when the campaign has basically failed to be more, I don't know how to put it, skillful in how they navigate these issues, where it's been so blatantly obvious what's happening. Because at the end of the day, and like I said, I'm sure Bernie has been consistent in what he said for a very long time. Overall, there might be issues where he's evolved. Guns is one of them. But, I think at the end of the day, everyone's a politician. Everyone's going to move with the political winds to an extent. Like you said, transparency is the issue that I think the Clinton campaign has faced. Let's see what Bill from Sebastian, Florida has to say.
Yes, Hillary seems to be pro-fracking, which is an environmental disaster. She hasn't spoken out against the charter schools, for-profit charter schools. She won't explain her speech at Goldman Sachs, and, of course, the TPP. I think these are important issues that have to be addressed and have to be addressed rationally.
Well, there you have it. So sounds like we have a few Bernie bros, people who are more supportive of I think Bernie Sanders and his consistency, and see him more as a progressive standard bearer. But what I find interesting is actually that Hillary Clinton, as part of her strategy, and this is something she said a couple months ago to Glenn Thrush and Political Podcast, but has tried to question his own authenticity to an extent. She said in that particular conversation with Glenn Thrush that I don't even know if Bernie Sanders is a Democrat.
Right.
He claims to be. And basically trying to suggest that, look, he is not as consistently progressive or liberal as he purports to be. And I think guns is one issue. They tried to do it with immigration. I think that was a little bit reaching, because he voted against not the 2013 compromise, but the previous one in 2007 because of a guest worker provision. And obviously he was trying to support workers and labor rights, but they had to vote against the overall package. It was clearly not an anti-immigration reform position. Is that a winning strategy, though? I mean, do you think Hillary Clinton can effectively make the case? Because they realize electability isn't going to work. I think that's why they went with this other route where it's, we've identified ourselves as being more progressive too. So why not just try and battle this out on the left?
I think that Hillary Clinton was handed a gift yesterday in the form of this interview that Bernie Sanders did with the New York Daily News, which was not very good for Senator Sanders. He essentially admitted he didn't know how he was going to get a lot of his things done.
Right.
Break up the big banks is a central point of his campaign, and he sort of admitted he didn't know how he was going to do it. And if I'm Hillary Clinton or running Hillary Clinton's campaign, which, let's face it, it ain't never gonna happen. But
no announcements to make.
Yeah. But that's the argument she should be sticking with. I've done this for a long time. I can get things done. I've done this. I've done this. I've done this. I've done this. This is what I can do. This is what I can do if I'm president. And quit saying, my opponent is running a campaign just like Donald Trump, or my opponent is a liar and all this. I mean, don't take everything so personally.
Right.
And spell out what it is that you can do that your opponent cannot do. She can say, I know how I'm going to get this done. It might not be the exact policy that you want or that you love, but I could get it done. And it's closer to what you love than what the other guy would do.
Absolutely. I think that's kind of the...
Hire me, basically, is what I'm saying. Hire me.
This could be the turning point. Speaking of turning points, though,
Go ahead. Ted
Cruz last night, we've been talking a lot about Hillary and Bernie, but we have to dedicate as much time to cruise control or whatever we're calling it. But here, he had a big night in
I'm
Wisconsin.
not calling it cruise control, by the way.
Okay.
I'm not going to call it
Okay.
that.
Lose with cruise is what Democrats are calling it.
Yeah.
But he had a candle in the wind moment. I don't know what to call it, but here's what he had to say about the impact of Wisconsin and its primary.
Wisconsin has lit a candle guiding the way forward.
I've never heard that before, light a candle. I've heard of light a fire.
He also called it a rallying cry. Here was how he actually began his speech.
It is a rallying cry. It is a call from the hardworking men and women of Wisconsin.
So Ted Cruz wants to kind of frame this as a major turning point. We were talking about this at kind of close to the top of the show, that where the Democratic win for Bernie may not have much bearing on the actual outcome of the race. But on the Republican side, it looks increasingly more like Donald Trump is not going to get to 1237.
Yeah. I think last night he had to have a better night, and he didn't.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't think he's going to get to 1237. I think he's going to go into the convention I still think he's going to go with significantly more delegates than Ted Cruz. And I don't know how that squares when it comes right down to it.
Republicans are already playing with fire. Reince Priebus himself, chairman of the RNC, has said you got to get to the magic number. And they're already hinting, and we'll talk about this with the great David Jackson after this break, but what a contested convention would look like. Would they, in Donald Trump's view, rob him of the nomination? Would they appoint someone from the outside and potentially cause riots, or would they just give it to Ted Cruz and agree to have the lesser of what they see as two evils? More on that after the break. Keep on watching The Bill Press Show.
Follow us on Twitter @BP Show. This is The Bill Press Show.
You taught him how to hit a baseball.
Just like that. Say hi!
How to hit a receiver. The strike zone. The net. You taught him how to hit the upper corner. You even taught him how to hit the open man. But how much time have you spent teaching him what not to hit?
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
I grew up in the housing projects of Cleveland. I didn't even know that life could be any better than it was. Education for me has been a way to get away from the agony of what was normal life. I want to be able to impact the community, not just look back on where I came from, but to reach back to where I came from and pull some people up with me. My name is David, and I am your dividend.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
Help keep all the presidential candidates straight with your progressive headquarters for the 2016 election. This is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to The Bill Press Show. Sabrina Siddiqui from The Guardian here this morning, filling in for Bill, and we are joined now by the great David Jackson, White House correspondent for USA Today, who is joining us on the phone from Milwaukee, where last night's primary went down. Good morning, David.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us bright and early. I know you had a late night in Wisconsin.
Well, it wasn't that late because both races were pretty much blowouts in a sense, so it was a little earlier. Earlier than some of them.
I don't know if you were painting the town red after the after the results poured in. You were writing about how Republicans really see Wisconsin as this turning point for the anti-Trump movement, and Ted Cruz certainly garnered a big win over Donald Trump, also securing 33 delegates, Trump winning just 3. So is this, in fact, a turning point in your view?
I think it could well be. It could at least a turning point to preventing Trump from getting a nomination on the first ballot, which is the goal of all these groups. As you mentioned, the big delegate win for Cruz last night, and they feel like he's got the momentum going into future states. Kasich's still in the race, and he feels like he's got a chance to maybe pull out a state or two. I know the anti-Trumpites were very satisfied with what happened last night.
So what do you think it was? Because we've talked a lot, and Peter Ogburn, our great producer here, and I were discussing, how none of the controversy that Trump has courted over the last, nearly 1 year in June, has had much impact. What happened going into Wisconsin?
For whatever reason, I think he hit a critical mass. I mean, people really started to take a second look at him. I don't know whether it was the abortion comments, or I don't know whether it was the foreign policy comments, or the arrest of Corey Lewandowski, or maybe all of the above. But I do sense a feeling among Republicans that they're really starting to have second thoughts about whether this guy should be nominated, and they were screwing around. Now, in Wisconsin also, there's a factor you'll hear about called Wisconsin nice, and that is that his style just really didn't fit in very well with the voters up here in Wisconsin. It's a very earnest place. They take their politics seriously, and a lot of them just didn't like the approach that Trump took to a lot of his positions, and his outspokenness, his brashness, his criticism. A lot of that didn't play very well up here.
Now, Ted Cruz, I want to play a quick clip of him talking about John Kasich, who did not have a good night in Wisconsin, but is insisted he will remain in the race. Although Ted Cruz seems to disagree, let's listen to what he had to say.
I think any candidate that doesn't have a path to winning, that's the time when you should suspend your campaign. And at this point, Kasich has been mathematically eliminated.
So, David, is it in fact beneficial to Cruz if Kasich drops out, or is it, I think from Kasich and his campaign's perspective, not only a case where the map moving forward could favor him in states like Pennsylvania and New York, but also that he needs to stay in the race to deprive Trump of 1237 delegates.
I think that's right. I'm really not sure why Cruz has been so outspoken about the Kasich factor, especially in a place like New York. I think if Cruz has any chance at all, it's winning a three-way split there, and that Kasich has to stay in. So certainly the anti-Trump folks want Kasich to stay in. The more the merrier as far as they're concerned. Cruz, for whatever reason, is seeking a one-on-one with Trump right now because he feels like he could win that. In fact, there's evidence that both campaigns are working to try to make sure that only they are actually put in the nomination in Cleveland. So if it's a one-on-one race, that increases the likelihood that someone will prevail on the first ballot. But I'm kind of like you. I think if they're going to deprive Trump of a first ballot win, I think Kasich has to stay in.
Well, when you look at the delegate count, now this is after Wisconsin, Trump still more than 200 delegates above Ted Cruz. He's got 740 to Cruz's 514. Kasich, of course, much lower with 143. I mean, when you crunch the numbers, though, is it in fact possible for Ted Cruz to win on the first ballot?
I don't see how unless he starts just racking up wins and gets all the delegates in some of these states. I think it's highly unlikely. I know I haven't crunched the percentage of it, but he would have to win, 80% of the remaining delegates or something like that. It's very hard for me to see how he does that.
That's why when you hear Ted Cruz talk about people being mathematically eliminated, I mean,
yeah,
it's not exactly the most genuine thing in the world. So next up is Pennsylvania, right? And the last I saw Donald
New York.
Oh, yeah,
New York,
of course,
April
there's New York.
Yeah.
And Donald Trump expected to do very well in New York. Yeah. Does he get any mojo back if he wins New York? Does that sort of switch back the momentum back towards Trump?
That's a very good question. I mean, I think a lot of it depends on what the coverage of it's going to be like. And also the percentage. I mean, how big does he win New York? If he gets over 50%, he's probably going to get a lot of credit for that. But if Cruz and Kasich can keep him under 50%, I think the questions about his candidacy will linger. He's planning a series of policy speeches, supposedly, so it'll be interesting to see how people receive those. But I think one thing he's got to do, I would look for him to avoid a lot of interviews in the next couple of weeks because that's where he's had some of his problems.
Yeah.
Right, and I was actually going to say to that point, David, real quick, that, one of the last-ditch efforts Donald Trump made was this plan about how would he force Mexico to pay for a border wall. Right. He released this the morning of the Wisconsin primary, saying he would cut off remittances sent by, of course, immigrants living in the U.S., back home many times to their families to provide for them. But do you think we're now moving to the place, and perhaps this is why he's planning a series of policy speeches where his campaign is sort of recognizing that we're past the point where the primary voters are, furious about immigration, where that's the wedge issue, where he can just make outrageous comments to win them over?
Right. I think so. Well, in their view, it's the natural evolution of the campaign that he needs to fill in some of the gaps on the policy platform. But I'm wondering if it's not a strategy to try to avoid question and answer sessions with people because that's where he's had a lot of his difficulties recently. I mean, I know he's famous for calling into talk shows, but I wonder if we're going to see a dip in that in the weeks ahead.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if we do. Certainly when you have you hit a rough patch, that's the first... That's the doctor's orders, really. So David Jackson, White House correspondent for USA Today, thank you so much for joining us. You can follow him on Twitter at DJUSA Today. Read his work online at usatoday.com. We'll be back after this break.
Your progressive headquarters for the 2016 election. This is The Bill Press Show.
For my 6th birthday, my grandpa gave me a Rubik's Cube. I'll always be able to remember its edges, hold it in my hands, heft the weight of an overwhelming problem. I remember him telling me about it. How Rubik's Cube has 43 quintillion, 252 quadrillion, 3 trillion, 274 billion, 489,856,000 possibilities. He told me it can be really confusing sometimes. But to look at the center squares as a reminder of what color each side should be. Shift. We're celebrating his 50th wedding anniversary. He and Grandma are dancing a dance that only fragile legs and wrinkled hands know how to. That type of happiness took him 70 years to earn. The white side of the cube is solved. Shift. He tells me about how he met Grandma. His college friends had a sunset picnic. She was there, as beautiful as an unsolved puzzle. She was a red-headed scramble on an orange tile sky. Shift. The walls of the hospital are blue. The nurses explain that his memories had become jumbled. Strangers in family portraits, pictures with mismatched faces. Alzheimer's has made his mind into a Rubik's Cube. Shift. He's a highway patrolman. His car is white. No, it's blue. He worked there for 30 years. Some nights he still does. Time is a complicated algorithm. Shift. The pills he holds are yellow and red and green. The weight of their color causes his hand to drop. I try to shift his tiles back into place, but people don't have center squares. His mind is a hospital bed divided by 0. Shift. My sister's wedding is white, but he doesn't know why. Shift. World War II is every color. The South Pacific is blue. The islands are green. There is so much red. Shift. Grandpa, table, cube, name, scramble, California, guitar, grapefruit, highway, wedding bell, war, stick shift rifles, South Pacific mirrors. Shift, 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 shift. The temperature of his hands is blue. Death is colorless. I will always remember his edges. Hold him in my hands, heft the weight of an overwhelming problem. I was unable to attend his funeral. I never found out the algorithm to solve him. A Rubik's Cube has over 43 quintillion possibilities. A casket only has one.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the Bill Press Show. Peter, you were just telling me in the break you've got a little story for us.
Well,
story time with Peter Ogburn.
No, I was just gonna the White House Correspondents' Dinner is coming up soon, and I like keeping tally of who's going to be there, right? Who's invited who? So I've got some names for you. If you're prepared for them.
I think I am.
USA Today has invited and will have Kendall Jenner. Who, by the way, USA Today identifies as supermodel.
If only they could see Jamie's face.
What was the face?
It was not excited, actually.
No.
They call her. By the way, they call her supermodel Kendall Jenner in this article that I'm reading on the Hill, which I disagree with. Alan Cumming will be there. Miles Teller from the Fantastic Four. They'll all be guests of USA Today. They'll also have Wendy McClendon Covey from the Goldbergs, who was also in Reno 911. Who I love. I love that show, and she's very funny in it. So there's a couple more names there.
Yeah.
Larry Wilmore is going to be the entertainment.
Was not exactly a who's list, by the way.
No, it's not. It's not. But
it's
look,
just one table.
I got to keep you up to speed on who's going to be there.
I don't know who we're inviting at the Guardian. I have no clue. I don't even know if I'm invited.
Can I just say, if you run short on people to invite,
weebs,
you could always invite Jamie Benson.
Yeah.
She was hinting at your dog.
Actually. Oh, you can take my dog instead of Jamie. He better behaved.
I mean, I know that Jamie,
but I would be honored,
Jamie really
Sabrina.
wants someone to hook him up with Kendall Jenner, so maybe this
with supermodel Kendall Jenner.
With supermodel Kendall
Just
Jenner.
make sure my name tag says Jesse.
Supermodel Jesse Benson. We're gonna take another quick break and then back afterward with Chris Moody. Keep on watching the Bill Press Show.
This is the Bill Press Show.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
You taught him how to hit a baseball.
Just like that. Say hi!
How to hit a receiver. The strike zone. The net. You taught him how to hit the upper corner. You even taught him how to hit the open man. But how much time have you spent teaching him what not to hit?
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
I grew up in the housing projects of Cleveland. I didn't even know that life could be any better than it was. Education for me has been a way to get away from the agony of what was normal life. I want to be able to impact the community, not just look back on where I came from, but to reach back to where I came from and pull some people up with me. My name is David, and I am your dividend.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
A single ember that escapes from a wildfire can travel more than a mile. That single ember can ignite and destroy your home or even...
How many more shopping malls?
How many more street corners?
How many more?
How many more?
Enough. 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 Enough.
Demand a plan.
Right now. As a mom.
As a dad. As a friend. As a husband.
As a wife.
As an American.
As an American.
As an American.
As a human being.
For the children of Sandy Hook.
Demand a plan. No more lists of names. It's not too soon.
It's too late.
Now is the time.
Before we all know someone who loved someone on that list.
No more lists.
No more.
Who they might have been. No more.
If we had just done something yesterday. It's time.
We can do better than this.
We can do better than this.
It's time.
It's time.
It's time for our leaders to act. Demand a plan. Right now.
Right now.
You! Demand it!
Enough.
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 Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to The Bill Press Show, top of the hour. Sabrina Siddiqui, political reporter at The Guardian, filling in for Bill on this Wednesday morning. And I've been having a lot of fun with a few people other than Peter Ogburn, who...
What?
Who we were having a
What's
great
happening here?
time. And then he'd almost skipped this segment.
Never in a million years have I ever even considered such a thing.
Rolled in just as we were coming back.
The flame war
from the
has
break.
begun.
Hey, look, if I'm right on time, doesn't mean I'm late.
All right. Well, Jamie Benson running the board. Hello, Jamie.
I'm always here for you, Sabrina.
Always here for you. He was going to step up and do
She
full
doesn't even
court.
know your name, dude. And you're going to act like that. She doesn't
It was a
even
while
know
ago.
your name.
Yeah. Ray Rogers is screening your calls, so keep on calling us at 866-55-PRESS. And Cyprian Bolding, our video operator, making us all look good here on camera. And now one of my favorite guests, the great Chris Moody, who is, of course, a senior reporter for CNN Politics. You can follow him on Twitter at Moody. Hello.
Good morning.
Good
To
morning.
be here.
We haven't done this in a long time.
No, we're going to have some fun.
We're going to have some fun. We have so much to talk about, especially I want to pick your brain about this possibility of a contested convention. We were just talking about how we have to get to know the actual rules and stuff. Now, I won't put you on the spot. But first...
This is the Full Court Press.
Yes, indeed. Just a couple of other stories making news. To the basketball court we go. Not college basketball, as we've been talking about, but the NBA, because last night the Minnesota Timberwolves came to the Golden State Warriors and beat them 124-117. It is the second loss that the Warriors have suffered at home.
Yeah.
And their record is now 69-9. Now, this means that they have to win the rest of their games to get the record for the most wins in a season currently held by the Chicago Bulls.
Hey, Peter, who was that other home loss at the hands of?
Oh, that was at the hands of the Boston Celtics, I believe,
Oh.
Jamie.
That's right.
This leaves
That's right.
one NBA team who is undefeated at home, and that would be your San Antonio Spurs. So,
I'm sorry, Peter. It's baseball season?
Oh.
So can we just...
I know.
I was going to say, Golden State's had obviously
I know,
an incredible run, notwithstanding this recent bout of trouble, but they did not face the Spurs last year, and I think the Spurs could actually be at least the winners of the West.
It's baseball season.
You look, I mean, you know, this is good. They're going to play the Spurs two more times.
Who let this guy?
I know.
I meant in the finals. I meant in the Western Conference Finals. That was
the
what I was getting at.
playoff Spurs versus playoff Warriors. I think America's ready to see that. Baseball.
Make America great again. That's it.
Last week, you might have heard the story about how George Mason University renamed their School of Law. They renamed it.
You're already laughing.
You've seen this story. The Antonin Scalia School of Law, which comes out to the ASS Law, right? Which that was a whole problem.
No, you have to add the of.
Yeah, that's right.
Ass of law.
Yeah.
Are we allowed to say that? Well, apparently we are.
So, but here's the thing. They've now realized, like, oops, we shouldn't be calling our thing the ass law. So they've now changed it on the website. It now says the Antonin Scalia, the Antonin Scalia Law School at George Mason University. So it's no longer the Antonin Scalia School of Law. It's the Antonin Scalia Law School. So it's the ASLS at George Mason. So they've taken away the ass law.
Wow. None of us even know what to say. It's like, we'll leave that.
Yeah.
We're just going to leave that there.
You can just leave that there.
Move on.
And congratulations to Sharon Cutts. She is now the proud mother of triplets. She gave birth to Mason, Ryan, and Lily in the hospital. A successful, happy, healthy birth. Here's the thing, though. She's 55 years old.
Wow.
She is the oldest woman in Britain. She's
I was
in
about
Britain.
to ask you, why are we talking about
she's
this
in
woman who
Britain.
had triplets?
Is this a friend of yours?
No.
Scott segment.
Mazel tov.
I was come on. It's a tease. I'm dragging it out here. She's the oldest woman to ever give birth to triplets in Britain. So congratulations to Sharon Cutts.
Congratulations from one British reporter to this British lady who had triplets.
There you go.
Yeah. Chris Moody, I have not seen you since we were in Florida. We were hanging out in West Palm Beach, your old stomping grounds. Marco Rubio, it was the evening before he dropped out of the presidential race. So a lot has changed since then. Or has it? Is my question for you.
Right.
We've been talking a lot on this show about whether or not last night is in fact the turning point that Ted Cruz and his allies, as well as the anti-Donald Trump movement, are advertising it to be. Now, you've been following the Never Trump movement. Do you think that they have a hand to play in what happened last night, or was it just, this one-off? Donald Trump himself got into, for once, I think, felt the impact of controversial remarks on abortion and Corey Lewandowski and all the drama.
Well, right. I don't think Donald Trump did himself any favors. What's interesting is, people will point to the millions of dollars that were spent against him in Wisconsin, but you could also point to the millions of dollars spent against him in other states that didn't seem to do very much. The question is the message finally resonating? One of the criticisms of anything that was anti-Trump was that it was not existent a few months ago. That if you remember earlier in the campaign, everyone kind of ignored Donald Trump as something that was going to fizzle out, so they did not invest big money against him. Well, as we all know, he didn't fizzle out. But you've covered these elections before, and you know that narratives take time to build. You can't just run an ad for a weekend and expect to turn the tide. You have to run it over and over and over again over a period of weeks or months. This is what Barack Obama did to Mitt Romney, building this narrative that he was this out-of-touch businessman, and they started in the early spring, and boy, by the general election, that was what everyone thought of when they thought of Mitt Romney because of that long-term strategy. And so I think the Never Trump people can argue that they've now been at this for a little bit, at least maybe a couple months or so, and it's finally starting to gel a little bit for them. And I think they're going to need more contests in order to test the strategy of whether this really is the turning point. But look, they see the light at the end of the tunnel here. They don't need Ted Cruz or John Kasich to win, and they know that all they got to do is put a lasso around Trump and just slow him down as much as possible. And I think they're seeing that his path to clinching that 1237 delegate mark is getting more and more difficult. They've also seen how poorly he's done, not in the presidential race, but really behind the scenes in the delegate fight at the state conventions that are far less covered than the earlier state primaries and caucuses. And they know he's not very good at this. And so I think they're feeling, if they can just keep him, I think they're feeling incredibly confident that they can run circles around him and his team and get somebody else into the nomination if they can get it to that convention floor.
You mentioned this question of process, where I was going to actually ask if also Donald Trump's lack of the same kind of infrastructure and just nuts and bolts of campaigning is actually catching up with him now. Utah and Wisconsin. Ted Cruz has one of the most vast ground games, probably arguably the most vast ground game in the Republican field, certainly what remains. But even before that, he really did replicate the Obama model for all the comparisons that were made between Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz. The critical difference was, in fact, one of them built this or tried to build the same sort of ground game and voter outreach program that Barack Obama has successfully used twice. Do you think that Donald Trump, now we're actually seeing the shortcomings of not really investing in that field or in field organizing?
I think Donald Trump had a perception of the presidential race in a way a lot of people do. I just run and people vote for me and then I get the delegates and I win. But because you're dealing with a semi-private a political party, there are all these rules that have been baked into the cake over 100 plus years, and there's all these little tiny loopholes and intricacies and work you have to do and can do to squeeze away delegates when really not a lot of people are looking. Like when the North Dakota convention is getting together, who knows what those rules are? You have to hire someone that does their homework or already really has a good knowledge of it. If you remember in 2012, Ron Paul was exceptional at this. Yeah, he came to the convention with a ton of delegates that seemed to come out of nowhere. Well, he was working that same ground game to the delegate outreach that now Cruz is doing. And we remember in 2012, the party passed that famous rule that a candidate has to get 8 state delegate victory wins. See, I'm tripping over just these arcane things in order to get their name on the ballots. And they wanted to block Ron Paul, and that's why we have that rule now. And I think that's actually going to get tossed out in this convention. But look, Trump did not put together the operation that is necessary in order to play chess here, in order to really do what is strategically necessary in order to win. People don't know this, but it's a lot more than just traveling around the country, giving speeches, and getting people to vote for you.
Right. I was actually also curious. I mean, like I was saying, we were last met when Marco Rubio was, on the cusp of, the make or break moment, which ultimately
and it broke.
And it broke.
Yeah, it certainly was make or break.
But I was curious, if Ted Cruz is also the beneficiary of Marco Rubio exiting the race. I mean, they have more obvious overlap, certainly. I think Marco Rubio really, especially toward the end of his campaign, tried to finally do what a lot of his critics had wanted him to do, which was come out against everything Donald Trump stands for. Is there a bounce that we've seen that Ted Cruz particularly has gained?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that is in the party having to coalesce around him, because all the party bigwigs, whether it's the governors or senators, they went from either Jeb Bush or Marco Rubio. They had to go to Ted Cruz. And we're talking even like Lindsey Graham, who said that the choice between Ted Cruz and Donald Trump is like getting poisoned or shot.
Yeah.
Well,
and he joked about murdering Ted Cruz.
He joked about murdering Ted Cruz a couple weeks earlier, and that was one of the greatest endorsements. Like, well, now I endorse him. Just okay.
Did you see him on The Daily Show with Trevor Noah?
No.
Oh, it was remarkable because Trevor Noah played back all these clips of Lindsey Graham for him. Trying to say, like, you literally just talked about killing the guy, and what do you have to say? And he was like, he's not Trump. It was like, what's your criteria? He was like, he's not Trump.
The
party, and he also said he's
those
not,
single issue
he
voters.
Said he's not completely crazy. And he's like, a little bit of crazy actually will get you somewhere in Washington.
The Republican Party has found themselves in a very difficult situation here. Look, let's just have some real talk. Party establishment, D.C., they do not like Ted Cruz. He rubs them the wrong way. He's always they see him as someone who's only in it for Ted Cruz, that will burn down the house in order to make himself look good and save the dog or something. Like they don't. I don't know where that analogy came from.
That's a good analogy. No, that's a good analogy.
The idea is it's remarkable that Ted Cruz is now the.
It's totally remarkable. It's really funny.
I was at the Senate yesterday, and Mitch McConnell had his press conference, first one since they came back from recess, and he was asked directly. A lot of your party is now rallying around Ted Cruz. Is there still bad blood between you guys? And he just sidestepped the question. But let's not forget.
He's a master at that.
Right. But let's not forget that Ted Cruz called Mitch McConnell a liar on the floor of the Senate.
Which is no small thing.
No small
deal.
You
do not do that on the floor of the Senate.
You don't do that to any of your colleagues, even in an opposing party, let alone the leader of your party. But listen, Chris, we're going to take a short break. And I want to do a little tease. He's got an exciting story for us about Larry Wilmore.
From the 80s.
From the 80s.
Look out, Larry.
Look out, Larry. So you better stay tuned. If you leave, you're going to miss out on Chris Moody and Larry Wilmore. Keep on watching The Bill Press Show.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
You taught him how to hit a baseball.
Just like that. Say hi!
How to hit a receiver. The strike zone. The net. You taught him how to hit the upper corner. You even taught him how to hit the open man. But how much time have you spent teaching him what not to hit?
Calls me googly eyes.
You know you're beautiful, right? You know that?
Even you are beautiful. I got bullied for wearing glasses. Share if you're against bullying.
We put it out there, just took off. 3 million people have shared this post. Don't Don't let bullies get you down. I stand with you. My whole family's wearing glasses. I wear glasses and I'm proud.
I even have the army on my team.
All the kind comments brought my child joy. I don't feel thank you is enough.
Thanks.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
I grew up in the housing projects of Cleveland. I didn't even know that life could be any better than it was. Education for me has been a way to get away from the agony of what was normal life. I want to be able to impact the community, not just look back on where I came from, but to reach back to where I came from and pull some people up with me. My name is David, and I am your dividend.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the Bill Press Show. We were talking to Chris Moody, who is about to tell us a story. So Larry Wilmore, why are we talking about him? He is going to be the host of the White House Correspondents' Dinner. This is President Obama's last Correspondents' Dinner. Chris, what do you got?
In the 1980s, Larry Wilmore and I went whale watching.
Whoa,
and
really?
I have it on a VHS
What?
tape. Yes. Yes.
Was Larry Wilmore a thing in the 80s?
Yeah, what?
Larry Wilmore
was
at
he
that
just a normal
time
dude?
was just starting out as a stand-up comedian. He had this great, and I'll probably do it terribly, but this joke about coming out to his parents as black. That's all I remember. Anyway, I was a little kid. So Larry went to my church, and in the church, they had a group for young actors and comedians, and he was part of this group.
And were you part of this group?
I was 4 years old, but I remember this really funny guy who I just thought he was just hilarious. And so they would all go out and do things and hang out. And one thing I distinctly remember is going whale watching.
Wait, but this is in Florida.
In Los Angeles, California.
Oh, okay, in California.
Right. Is going whale watching with Larry, and we had a great time. And now he's very successful, and I can't imagine he remembers who I am.
Wait,
in the
can you
slightest bit.
please go up to
I was going to
him?
say, you should totally
I
go
would,
talk
Larry,
to
if you're
him.
watching, if you're listening,
You probably don't remember this.
If you're watching Larry Wilmore, Chris Moody right here, who is also impressive, senior political reporter.
Yeah, look at what you guys have
at
done with your lives since
CNN
then.
Politics and the host of Being Moody.
Yeah.
You guys went whale watching together. You have to go up to him at the dinner.
I
You have
will.
to be
I
that
will.
guy and just be like, hey, Larry.
Remember when we went whale watching in
It's
1989?
like the Chris Farley show. You ever go whale watching? You remember that time that I was with you when I was 3?
Well, here's what you gotta do.
That was awesome.
You gotta convert the VHS.
Okay,
Put it on your
yeah,
phone.
so I went.
No, wait,
Put it
can
on
you
your
just
phone.
No, I went
Can you
home.
interrupt one of his like skits in the dinner? Like
Larry,
if he's got a video that plays.
Remember that humpback?
Larry, you do your whale watching joke.
just cut off one of like the videos. If you know how they cut to these video jokes they have, and just play this clip of you guys
I went home,
watching.
and my mom has this whole wall of VHS tapes, and I watched like 20 of them. I couldn't find it.
Oh no!
I'm desperately like looking and looking. It might be on one of like the little tapes.
Yeah.
You know, I'm trying to remember the era of VHS.
And it was to keep this Larry Wilmore Will watching DVD.
As soon as I find it, this is going
VHS.
on Vine or internet. Like it's going on internet.
On the internet.
Put this on internet.
Put it on. It will be done as soon as I can
internet,
find the Larry Wilmore Will watching tape.
Wow.
From the 80s.
Wow.
So, yeah,
I would love to see that.
I think we just found our
funny.
front runner to host the next correspondence dinner right here. This is a good bit. You guys.
This is a good bit.
I'm thrilled for his success. He's done a great job.
This is a good line.
And he did all the shows in the 90s that I love.
This is a good arc for an episode of our buddy comedy.
And we'll bring Larry in. He could write it. He'd be
Larry,
great.
Chris and I also have a buddy comedy, which you can write and guest star in. But it's like, it could be the episode where you're like looking for this VHS of you and Larry Wilmore. And I'm like, this doesn't exist. You don't know Larry Wilmore. Shut up.
I'm going to find it.
Yeah, it's great.
Chris just made this whole story up. That's what I'm gathering. He's never been whale watching.
Never been whale watching.
He's never been whale watching.
I don't think you could. The whale watching is a thing. No, I'm just kidding.
In California,
I went in Alaska.
Oh, lovely.
I actually did go whale watching.
But was Larry
I'm sure
Wilmore
that
on your
our
boat?
listeners had.
No. Let's dive deep on the whale watching tour. Let's dig a little deeper on that.
This should be like a debate question. Like
Yeah.
I mean, we've had stranger debate questions.
That is actually true.
What superhero would you be is like an actual question.
That is your final
asked.
question,
So what
Chris
superpower
Moody.
would you have?
I
What would
just
you
like
have? Tell me.
Batman not having any superpowers.
There you go.
Uh-oh.
No, I'm with him
I
on
gotta
that.
get all deep
Except
now.
the benefits of free market capitalism.
And on that note, thank you, Chris Moody. Follow him on Twitter at Moody. I apologize, guys. Keep on watching The Bill Press Show. We'll be back after this break.
This is The Bill Press Show.
The most important issue on this planet right now is to protect and conserve biodiversity in the world's oceans. And I don't think people realize just how intimate our connection is with the oceans themselves. Not only do they provide the very foundation of life and control our weather, but life just simply could not exist without a healthy ocean. The real problem, though, is apathy. It's all out of sight, it's all out of mind, and people don't even think about it. But it doesn't matter whether you live in Peoria or on the coast. The fact is, whatever happens in the ocean affects all life forms on the planet Earth. If the oceans die, then civilization collapses. We all die. We cannot live on this planet without the oceans. This is, in fact, not the planet Earth. It's the planet ocean, but because we're a land-dwelling species, we refer to it as Earth. But it is the planet ocean, and the oceans are the heart and the foundation of all life on the planet.
A single ember that escapes from a wildfire can travel more than a mile. That single ember can ignite and destroy your home or even your community. You can't control where the ember will land, only what happens when it does. Get Fire Adapted now at fireadapted.org.
Columbine, Virginia Tech,
Tucson,
Aurora,
Fort Hood, Oak Creek, Newtown.
Newtown,
Newtown.
Newtown.
How many more? How many more? How many more colleges? How many more classrooms?
How many more movie theaters?
How many more houses of faith?
How many more shopping malls?
How many more street corners?
How many more?
How many more?
Enough.
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 Demand a plan.
Right now. As a mom.
As a dad, as a friend, as a husband.
As a wife.
As an American.
As an American.
As an American.
As a human being.
For the children of Sandy Hook.
Demand a plan. No more lists of names. It's not too soon.
It's too late.
Now is the time.
Before we all know someone who loved someone on that list.
No more lists.
No more.
Who they might have been. No more.
If we had just done something yesterday. It's time.
We can do better than this.
We can do better than this.
It's time.
It's time.
It's time for our leaders to act.
Demand a plan. Right now.
Right now.
You! Demand it!
Enough.
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 Streaming live video right now at youtube.com/TawkrTV. That's TAWKR-TV. This is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the Bill Press Show. Sabrina Siddiqui here, political reporter with The Guardian, filling in for Bill this morning. And joining us now is Adam Smith, the director at Every Voice, whom you can follow on Twitter at asmith83. Good morning, Adam.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us today. We've got a lot of exciting things to talk to you about. But I want to kick off with something that, Peter, I know you guys have been talking about on the show, which is this question of Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders and this debate over the fossil fuel industry. Now, Sanders and his campaign have alleged that Hillary Clinton is taking money from the fossil fuel industry, and Clinton was asked about this on the rope line. Let's listen to that exchange.
Will you act on your words and reject fossil fuel money in the future in your campaign?
Yes, I do not. I have money from people who work for fossil fuel companies. I am so sick. I am so sick of the Sanders campaign lying about me. I'm sick of it.
Okay, so this was an
She's so
activist.
sick of the Sanders campaign.
The audio is
lying.
a bit fuzzy. This is an activist who asked this question. Framed in fact is to say, will you stop taking money from the fossil fuel industry? And then Hillary Clinton clearly has had enough of this and says, I'm so sick of the Sanders campaign lying about me. Adam Smith, can you break down for us what this is about?
Sure. So, money in politics has become this huge issue in the 2016 campaign. I think on the Republican side and the Democratic side. And, one of Bernie's main messages is, I'm not bought. There's a corrupt, the millionaires and the billionaires and the corrupt campaign finance
That's
system.
pretty good.
Is it good? Good. Been working on it. And so
Practicing in the mirror this morning before he came in.
Right, exactly. And so she gets this question from Greenpeace, and the whole basically for months Sanders' campaign has sort of been calling her corrupt with innuendo, right? And I think she's had enough of it. And so there was this big back and forth then where she said, no, I don't take fossil fuel money. And the Sanders campaign said, look at all of these campaign contributions you got from the fossil fuel industry. And there's this big back and forth with all these fact checkers and saying, what is influence? Money in politics is a really complicated issue. So is the engineer at Chevron who kicks in a couple $100 the same as a lobbyist who has Chevron as one of his 20 clients who gives $2,700? And so that was sort of the debate over the past few days and of the issue.
So is it fair to say or to suggest that Hillary Clinton is quote unquote taking money from the fossil fuel industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think that she definitely has oil and gas industry money. Some of it from she doesn't have, like, Chevron's PAC isn't giving her money, for example. Right. But someone at a lobby firm who counts an oil company as clients definitely is. And It sort of shows, though, that when you're raising this kind of money, like it's just, the fossil fuel money is such a small percentage of her money because she's raising so much from everyone. And Bernie has a little bit too, because you can't raise that kind of money and not be covered by some interests.
That's what I was going to ask. Is there an equivalent on the Bernie Sanders side of the fossil fuel money for Hillary? There's got to be, right? I mean, if you look at the money that these guys
I think if you look at some of, again, it becomes an issue of who's is it the people in the factory, or is it the lobbyists, is it the CEO? You know, I think Bernie has a lot of money from like government contractor types. I haven't looked at the rest of it, but that's the one thing that stands out. And I think that the issue is that Clinton does not do a good job of answering these questions.
Right.
She's had months to get better at answering these. Are you tied to Wall Street? Are you tied to oil? And
money from Goldman Sachs?
Yeah, and
speeches.
as someone who sort of has looked at money and politics research and polling for a really long time, she doesn't do a good job of responding to it because politicians don't like their integrity to be called into question.
Sure.
And when you're saying you're bought by these industries, that's what you're doing. Yeah.
This all, by the way, reminds me of the Onion headline. Bernie Sanders clearly in pocket of high-rolling elementary school teacher who donated $300 to his campaign.
Well, you know, because I was going to ask you, you've studied this closely, and you've heard it in both parties. I mean, the influence of money in politics. In fact, Donald Trump has made a big deal about the fact that he's not beholden to special interests. I mean, now he is obviously a millionaire himself through his own business. He claims he's a billionaire, but allegedly he's just a millionaire.
Right.
But, you know, but the point being, he's not, you know, there might be super PACs who spend money in his favor, but he like Bernie Sanders, he very much has the same message that all of these other opponents of mine are bought and paid for, and they're just saying whatever their donors want them to say. But I think in the Democratic primary, because it's such a central cornerstone of the back and forth between Sanders and Clinton, is it having impact? Are you seeing this actually negatively affecting Hillary Clinton when it comes to voters turning up at the polls?
Well, I think it's I don't know if it's negatively impacting voters. It is definitely, I think, animating Sanders supporters. Okay. And I think that what's so interesting is, if I were able to give her advice on this issue, I would say that you can't just deflect. You can't just sort of say, no, I'm not. You have to, she should say, yes, this system sucks. All right. I recognize it. She add some reality to it. I recognize that this system is what it is, and I participate in it to win. But I would put my policy fighting oil companies up against anyone. And like Sanders, I have a plan to reform our democracy to address these issues. And because Sanders and Clinton both have really strong, comprehensive money and politics reform plans.
They both have. I think they both support a constitutional amendment.
Constitutional amendment.
Citizens United
constitutional amendment, but everything else. I mean,
Right.
they both have released really broad, good
Campaign
plans.
finance reform plans.
And if she just talked about that a little bit more, I think it would help her to deflect from some of these arguments.
Rather than seeming defensive.
Yeah.
Because then that contributes to the notion that she's hiding something when, in fact, like you said, if you're just a little bit more open and explaining, some of it is a reality. It is a system that sucks, but you know, actually, it's funny. I interviewed Marco Rubio the evening before he dropped out, and one of the points I raised with him, and he was being a lot more candid, knowing I think the end was near, was that, listen, I've followed you around, and what I hear so much from voters is they're just so fed up of money in politics. I mean, it's on their Republican side, too. They're routinely, even though conservatives are the ones who, of course, pushed for really unlimited spending in the elections, your own primary electorate is fed up, and that's part of why they gravitate toward Trump. I mean, he kind of said it's a vexing issue, but he was like, listen, this is very expensive.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
like, this is what it is, so I don't know what to do. Like, you know, obviously in his case, you know, he had a super PAC that was spending so much more money than his campaign was in advertising, and he really aggressively courted donors, and there was a lot of ties that were drawn in the media to what position he takes and what donors are saying, whether it's Sheldon Adelson, the Koch brothers. So that was a little bit tougher. I think on the Republican side, there's a very clear link in what they often advocate. and what the big dollar donors are.
Yeah, I love Marco Rubio because he said this in an interview. He complains about it, and then it's like classic Marco Rubio, complain about the problem but not offer any solutions. And but yeah, it's not just Trump though. You know, when Ted Cruz talks about taking on the Washington cartel, that's a comment about money in politics, right? And even Jeb Bush, when he had offered some lobbying reform proposal, all of these candidates.
Jeb Bush supported transparency too. I think he said we should. I don't know if he's saying, kind of pushing back a bit against dark money, saying people should.
Yes.
I don't know the extent of it, but
he agreed without offering any policy. Yes.
Right.
But yes,
on
absolutely.
principle.
On principle, yeah, and that's what's so different this cycle. In 2012, you had a candidate who said you should be rich to run for office. You know, and Mitt Romney was really bad at this. But all these candidates more than in 2012 are talking about money in politics, which I think shows the public anger at the issue.
Yeah, and Ted Cruz, as you mentioned him, he of course is the beneficiary of a great, not that he doesn't have high dollar donors, he's getting more and more, but the beneficiary of a lot of smaller donations. I mean, grassroots has really been his model from the beginning, much like Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, he has like this, it's like not in the middle, right? You have 8-figure donations on one side and small donations on the other. Yeah.
Right. We're going to take a short break, but we got a lot more to get into with Adam Smith. So keep on watching The Bill Press Show and tweet us too with what you think about money in politics. Always a very, I think, an issue that gets people charged up. So tweet us at BP Show and we'll be back with you after the break.
Connect with The Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is The Bill Press Show.
You taught him how to hit a baseball.
Just like that. Say hi!
How to hit a receiver. The strike zone. The net. You taught him how to hit the upper corner. You even taught him how to hit the open man. But how much time have you spent teaching him what not to hit?
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
I grew up in the housing projects of Cleveland. I didn't even know that life could be any better than it was. Education for me has been a way to get away from the agony of what was normal life. I want to be able to impact the community, not just look back on where I came from, but to reach back to where I came from and pull some people up with me. My name is David, and I am your dividend.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth justice, because the earth needs a good lawyer.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the Bill Press Show. We were talking with Adam Smith, who's the director at Every Voice, about money in politics, which is, of course, just a fascinating issue because, one, there's the sheer amount of money that's been poured into the political system. But I think in this election, the real question being raised of how effective is it? Not to say in 2012 this wasn't an issue. We remember Republicans, I think, outspent, Democrats 3-1, and there was something like, $800 million spent against the president in his reelection bid, and he was dwarfed in terms of the spending, and yet we all know he won by a landslide anyway. But this is still, I think this, when it comes to super PACs, I was curious to get your take, Adam, because there's this, one victory in Wisconsin where the anti-Trump movement is kind of claiming that it's a turning point, that they're taking credit for it. They spent millions of dollars up against Trump, put them in TV ads up against Trump in Wisconsin. And Ted Cruz certainly did have a double-digit significant win. At the same time, they've spent millions of dollars in other states against Donald Trump to no avail.
Yeah. So I think that, like I said earlier, money in politics is a really complicated issue. So when you look at someone like Jeb Bush and his utter failure, and people said, this shows money doesn't matter, it just simplifies a really complicated issue. So I would say that and super PACs and sort of money doesn't guarantee that you're going to win an election, but it absolutely makes sure you can run. And since January, Ted Cruz's super PAC has hosted 20 events that he's gone to, and you have to wonder if Ted Cruz wasn't getting $10 million checks to a super PAC, would he still be in the race? The same with John Kasich, who's raised very little sort of hard money to his campaign, but his super PAC has raised millions. Would he still be in the race? So I think so that's one issue. Also, the presidential race is just different, and Donald Trump has been able to use the media and sort of his personality in a way that we haven't seen before. At some point, everybody has enough to get their voice out there at the presidential race. But there are a lot of other races down ballot where if somebody, when a House race on average costs about $1.3 million per candidate, if someone can go in with $1 million and sort of buy all the ad time, that can make a big difference, whereas $1 million in the presidential race won't.
It's interesting because you talked about kind of the hard dollars of a campaign versus super PACs. And I think that is an important distinction because you mentioned Jeb Bush, and there were a lot of people who said this underscores, why the super PACs have lost their influence. And Right to Rise had its own, I think, problems and just sheer strategy that made it a very ineffective super PAC, namely that they were obsessed with Marco Rubio and their entire super PAC seemed devoted to spending money to tear down his candidacy
and do
nothing else.
Either.
And no one liked their candidate,
which is a big issue.
But, it's to your point, Jeb and Marco Rubio, who also, a lot of his spending came in ads, certainly through his super PAC or the super PAC that supported him. They may have not even lasted as long as they did had it not been for having the resources to fall back upon in their respective super PACs.
Absolutely. When you sort of look at the candidates that dropped out, none of them had this kind of money. And would Jeb Bush had made it as long, lost as many times as he did, and had no polling and made it otherwise. So that's sort of the thing about these super PACs is they're not going to, like I said, you're not going to guarantee you an election, but they make sure you can run. And it allows this sort of elite group of people that can write these huge checks to decide who gets to keep going, right? So if all of a sudden the rich people decided that Ted Cruz, we're done with him, they could have stopped writing him $10 million checks, then he would have been done. And so should we have this sort of elite set of people deciding who is able to run for office?
So I kind of want to ask you, because we talked a bit before the break about how Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton actually do have comprehensive campaign finance reform proposals. And one of the key points of difference that between the two, or at least certainly that Clinton's campaign raises, is who's more pragmatic and who's more practical about how to actually achieve something meaningful. And on the issue of campaign finance reform, because a lot of people rail against money in politics, what are, in your view, as someone who studied this issue closely, realistic proposals that you could see happening in the foreseeable future that would make sense to push for because there's real potential to make ground?
Sure. So as president, there are actually some executive actions you can take. Both Clinton and Sanders have said they would support an executive order that would require government contractors to disclose their political spending. So that's one thing they could go into office and sign right away. You could instruct agencies like the FCC and the IRS to look at rulemaking on disclosure. So there's a lot of disclosure stuff you can do without Congress. I do think Congress, if you wanted to do like a matching fund, public financing program, things like that, you would definitely need Congress for that, or more disclosure, you would need congressional legislation. So at the federal level, it's hard unless you have. It's going to take a lot more effort to get Congress on board these pieces, but there is some executive action.
I'm kind of curious as to, well, I guess Hillary Clinton has already proposed a series of executive actions on this front, right?
She has agreed to some, yes.
I'm curious to see how much more we hear, because one of the things that and just quickly, because so we have to get going, but one of the things I was curious about is she's raised the issue a lot about how Bernie Sanders is kind of hypocritical when it comes to campaign finance, because he insists he's not supported by super PACs, but in fact is. Is that something that you think is inaccurate?
I think it's really tricky. I think, the super PACs that are supporting him are, like the nurses and like communications workers, right? And so the collected small contributions of like millions of average Americans. And so that's one of the differences. But it also shows that at some point, Bernie himself is... he himself doesn't change the structure of the system that we're in, right? And so if he wins the nomination, he's going to have to go to those six-figure DNC fundraisers to raise money for the party. He maybe he can raise $2-3 billion in $27 donations, but I doubt he can. And so it changes once he wins the nomination. It shows that one candidate doesn't change the structure of the system. You actually have to make structural changes.
There will be a point where he'll have to be part of the system, as we have seen from President Obama himself.
Absolutely.
Shining example. Adam Smith, director at Every Voice, thank you so much for joining us today. You can follow him again on Twitter at asmith83. We're going to take a short break and come back with Laura Basset, friend of mine and great reporter at the Huffington Post. Stay tuned. Keep on watching The Bill Press Show.
Get social with Bill Press. Like us at facebook.com/Bill Press Show. This is The Bill Press Show.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
For Mike Brown. I'm sick of writing this poem, but bring the boy. His new name, his same old body, ordinary black dead thing, bring him. And we will mourn until we forget what we are mourning. And isn't that what being black is about? Not the joy of it, but the feeling when you're looking at your child, turn your head, then poof, no more child. That feeling. That's black. Think. Once, a white girl was kidnapped, and that's the Trojan War. Later, up the block, Troy got shot, and that was Tuesday. Are we not worthy of a city of ash, of 1,000 ships launched because we are missed? I demand a war to bring the black boy back, no matter what his name is this time. I at least demand a song. A song will do. Or a head.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
A single ember that escapes from a wildfire can travel more than a mile. That single ember can ignite and destroy your home or even your community. You can't control where that ember will land, only what happens when it does. Get Fire Adapted now at fireadapted.org.
And Peter, believe it or not, Laura has never been in when I've guest hosted.
I'm embarrassed
It's your fault.
that I failed as a producer to make this happen.
I'm horrified.
And I'm so happy that it's going to happen next hour.
This is like an epic summit happening right now.
I feel really good about this.
Broadcast magic
of like
is what I would
Lady
call it.
Journos, former HuffPosters. I've had Artie in here so many times.
Yeah, he
You know.
does every Monday.
Or yeah, doesn't he do?
He's here every Tuesday.
Every Tuesday.
At 6:30 a.m. Eastern Time, he's here.
Tune in for Arthur Delaney.
Arthur Delaney. He lives like down the block. Let's not give him too much credit.
Yeah, no, I know.
He like wakes up, gets
He
out of
rolls
bed.
into here,
Now
yeah.
he's got a baby. He's awake anyway. Laura, we're gonna be talking to you about. I think you came back from vacation. Donald Trump made strange comments about abortion.
Strange is one way to put it.
Yeah, put you right back into the grind. So after this break, stay tuned for more with me and Laura and Peter. I guess.
This is the Bill Press Show.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Calls me googly eyes.
You know you're beautiful, right? You know that?
Even you're beautiful. I got bullied for wearing glasses. Share if you're against bullying.
We put it out there, just took off. 3 million people have shared this post. Don't let bullies get you down. I stand with you. Our whole family's wearing glasses. I wear glasses and I'm proud.
I even have the army on my team.
All the kind comments brought my child joy. I don't feel thank you is enough.
That's
A single ember that escapes from a wildfire can travel more than a mile. That single ember can ignite and destroy your home or even your community. You can't control where that ember will land, only what happens when it does. Get Fire Adapted now at fireadapted.org.
I wanted to find a bank with a purpose. I wanted to find a place that would take my money and not use it to cause the financial crisis, but to fix the financial crisis and to help end income inequality.
The people that we employ are usually clients right off the streets. They don't have an account, but Amalgamated is willing to get that started for them.
Their reputation of supporting the working man, I think, speaks for itself. This is a bank that cares for their customers, and I appreciate that.
We were able to access a construction loan through the bank's programs, and that loan has helped us house 28 families in the community.
Amalgamated is a bank that was started for and about working people.
Many of our customers have a deep commitment to advocating for social and economic justice. We share that commitment, and we're not afraid to stand up and say that we need to change some of the way that the country does business.
I grew up in the housing projects of Cleveland. I didn't even know that life could be any better than it was. Education for me has been a way to get away from the agony of what was normal life. I want to be able to impact the community, not just look back on where I came from, but to reach back to where I came from and pull some people up with me. My name is David, and I am your dividend.
The most important issue on this planet right now is to protect and conserve biodiversity in the world's oceans. And I don't think people realize just how intimate our connection is with the oceans themselves. Not only do they provide the very foundation of life and control our weather, but life just simply could not exist without a healthy ocean. The real problem, though, is apathy. It's all out of sight, it's all out of mind, and people don't even think about it. But it doesn't matter whether you live in Peoria or on the coast. The fact is, whatever happens in the ocean affects all life forms on the planet Earth. If the oceans die, then civilization collapses. We all die. We cannot live on this planet without the oceans. This is, in fact, not the planet Earth. It's the planet ocean, but because we're a land-dwelling species, we refer to it as Earth. But it is the planet ocean, and the oceans are the heart and the foundation of all life on the planet.
It's on us to stop sexual assault.
To get in the way before it happens.
To get a friend home safe.
And to not blame the victim.
It's on us.
To look out for each other.
To not look the other way.
It's on us to stand up.
To step in.
To take responsibility.
It's on us, all of us,
to stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the Bill Press Show. Sabrina Siddiqui here, political reporter at The Guardian with these guys. I'm filling in for Bill this morning. And Laura Basset, our great guest from the Huffington Post, was just talking about whether she's had enough coffee to banter.
Did not know we were on air.
We're on air. We're live.
That's okay. Don't worry about it. This is what makes it all the more fun.
Yeah.
And Peter Ogburn, of course, executive producer.
I'd lost control.
Getting us through the morning.
My fault. I'm sorry, Laura.
When in doubt, always blame Peter. That's the lesson.
Fair.
Amen. That's the motto of this show.
That doesn't apply to you, Jamie.
I know. And that amen you heard is from Jamie Benson, who is running the board. Hello, Jamie.
Good morning, Sabrina.
Good morning. And Ray Rogers is screening your calls, so don't forget to call us at 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. And then, of course, my personal favorite, Cyprian Bolding, our video operator, who makes us look...
Wait, he's your personal favorite?
He is. He says hi to me. You know, personally says hi to me. I'm like...
Don't be a hater.
Hey! See? He doesn't
Fair
do
enough.
that for anyone else.
That's true.
That's
true.
Now, Laura, of course, does a lot of great reporting at the Huffington Post, and you can follow it not only at thehuffingtonpost.com, but also on Twitter at Ellie Bassett. And we're going to get into a lot of the controversy that Donald Trump made in recent weeks with his comments, many, many comments about abortion. But first...
This is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple of other stories making news. So in Washington, D.C., you know it's okay to have pot now. You're able to have marijuana, but here's the thing. You can't...
speak from experience.
I do speak from experience, as a matter of fact. You can have it on you, but you can officially no longer smoke it in public or in clubs. That went into effect yesterday as the city council took a vote. It was actually a close vote, 7-6, that would ban public pot smoking. Now, again, part of the problem with the D.C. law is it's a little ambiguous as to what public means. Does your front porch mean public? Because it is your property, but you are outside. So they still have a little ways to go in terms of solidifying.
Initially, the idea was that you would pay a fine, right? It was like a $20.
Yeah, it was a very small fine.
Very small fine if you were smoking pot. I wonder what Ryan Grimm would think about this.
I mean, he's probably high right now.
I mean, part of the problem, we came this close to smoking pot in here when it became legal. But
a test.
For a show.
For a show,
Yes.
on the show. But the problem was, our lawyer was saying, this is technically not your property, right? We rent this space that we've put together, but this isn't our property. So how does that squish? That's part of the problem with the law.
What's the logic behind that law? Is it the smell that's the problem? Is it they don't want stoned people walking around?
I'm not really sure. I mean, they just say they don't
walk around anyway. You can smoke up in your house and then go outside.
So they're not violent.
Is that right? Is that true?
We're trying to follow logic.
That's a good point.
Wait, to be high in public, I don't have to just get high on the street?
It depends on what side of the doorway you're
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a matter of inches, I guess. Who would be the best president if you were to ask a fictitious character? That is the question that Bradley Whitford got on MSNBC yesterday. He was asked about what President Bartlett from the West Wing would think of Hillary Clinton. He said that he thinks that Hillary Clinton would be the far most qualified candidate to run for president, and that President Bartlett from the West Wing would agree.
See, I thought you were about to ask which movie president would be the best president, which I think is or which fictional president would be the best real president.
President Camacho.
Well, Bill Pullman at Independence Day.
That's pretty good.
That's a pretty good one. I forgot he was president now.
Harrison Ford in Air Force One.
Harrison Ford is a good one.
Yeah, but that speech.
Sinbad? Wasn't Sinbad president in the movie?
Sinbad was president in the movie.
He was like a Secret Service
What about
guy?
the president in Scandal?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I wonder why, Laura. Why do you think?
But so anyway, so he says that this fictitious guy on
Frank
TV...
Underwood, sorry.
Not Frank Underwood.
No, I know.
This
I'm
guy.
just saying we forgot about him.
He thinks that Hillary Clinton would be the
off?
best.
Okay. I have no opinion on what the fictional president from the West Wing thinks about Bernie versus Hillary. I guess he's not a Bernie bro.
Yeah. What Sabrina's trying to tell you, Peter, is she did not like that story.
Yeah. What she's trying to say is next.
Yeah. Do better.
So we know that Villanova won the men's basketball championship on Monday night in college basketball, but what about the ladies? That took place last night.
What about the ladies?
Let's not forget about those ladies, y'all. UConn taking on Syracuse, and it was not close. The UConn women Huskies defeated Syracuse 82-51.
Ouch.
Was the final score there. Not even...
it's literally behind you as well.
Is it really?
On
a competing network?
On Fox News.
So I only stay focused on the show that we do here.
Oh.
I can't let distractions
Why you got
slip
these
in.
TVs on then?
It's going to be a fun final hour.
It's fun is one way to describe it. Anyway, congratulations to the UConn women Huskies. They have won 4 straight national championships in basketball, which is insane. They finished the season 38-0. Their overall winning streak, which goes back to last season, is 75 games, which is remarkable.
Wow.
It's a big, big story.
Great for them.
Yeah, it's huge. They'll get another trip. They'll get another trip to the White
People
House.
don't talk about women's sports enough.
I've said many, many times.
Yeah, you have. I'm just saying.
No. I've said many, many times when it comes to, like, I have season tickets to the women's professional soccer team. I don't watch any men's soccer. I only watch women's soccer because I think it's better. They play the sport better.
Yeah.
Well, they crushed all kinds of national TV records with their World Cup win and got paid a fraction of what the men.
I know. No, absolutely.
So.
It's crazy. It's crazy what's happening there.
It's crazy, and they're suing now for equal pay.
Good for them.
Yeah.
Good for them. So, Laura, you cover a wide spectrum of women's issues in politics, but among them, of course, is the debate over abortion. Donald Trump, you may have heard of him.
Once or twice.
Once or twice. Now, he kicked off a firestorm, which he has done countless times since launching his presidential campaign last June. Except this time, it seems to have actually had an impact on him and his standing, certainly among women, but in the polls. I want to first play a clip of his initial comments. He was in a town hall with Chris Matthews of MSNBC and pressed on whether or not there should be legal repercussions for women who have abortions if the practice is illegal.
The answer is that there has to be some form of punishment.
For the woman?
Yeah, there has to be some form.
10 cents, 10 years,
I don't
what?
know. That I don't know. That
Why
I don't
not?
know. I don't know.
You take
because I
positions
don't
and everything
wanna-
else.
Frankly, I do take positions and everything else. It's a very complicated position.
So, Laura, can you kind of walk us through, the initial impact of this comment as well as how his response evolved in the following days?
Yeah. So this was an extremely problematic comment for Trump to make, both obviously for liberals and for conservatives. It was pretty crushing, actually, to the anti-abortion movement, who has been carefully crafting this messaging over the past few decades to try to paint themselves as being super caring and compassionate towards women, not trying to punish the women. And it's actually a pro-choice feminist talking point to say what these politicians are trying to do with these anti-abortion laws is punish women. So Trump really kind of undermined the anti-abortion movement when he said that. And that was a huge problem. And then he tried to walk back his statements, and he went in the complete opposite direction by saying, I don't believe the woman should be punished, and I think that abortion laws are fine as they are, and they should stay exactly as they are. And this just dug the hole further, because anti-abortion activists are obviously pushing for many, many more laws, a 20-week ban in Congress. Right now.
And I think you know this is a great point, because I think that a lot of women who are against abortion will admit, like, it's not an easy decision for women who have an abortion, right? It's not something that's flippantly done.
Right.
And
they're not looking forward to
even
it.
Even pro-choice women will say that.
Well, yeah. Yes, of course.
They're going to say, we're not, a lot of them I've even spoken to will say, I don't even know if I would personally have an abortion. It's about choice.
It's about choice. The legality of it.
Yeah, so legality and allowing women to make the decision.
So the understanding on both sides of the aisle is this is a very, very tough thing to do, and you can see yourself in that situation where you have to make that decision, right?
1 in 3 women will have an abortion in their lifetime.
And so you go you make your own mind and you go, that's the whole thing about choice. But to say that you want to punish women, exactly, undermines the whole thing.
Well, I was going to say, is that a view that, any prominent pro-life group has taken, or is that been off the table for conservatives? Don't go there because that will undermine the cause.
Well, so it's in their talking points, they will say, we absolutely don't want to punish women. We want to punish the doctors because they see women as victims of these sort of greedy doctors that are trying to take advantage of them and whatnot. And so they name bills things like the Protect Women Act, which are just anti-abortion bills in disguise. But what Trump's comment did is it drew attention to the fact that a lot of these laws already are punishing women for abortions, even though the talking points from the other side won't say that. Women have to wait 72 hours between two different appointments to have an abortion. They have to drive hundreds of miles because the clinics are closed. There are women sitting in jail for feticide after they had a miscarriage or after they tried to order abortion pills on the internet.
Transvaginal ultrasounds.
Invasive transvaginal ultrasounds, having to listen to detailed descriptions of the fetus even if they don't want to. They're being punished all the time already. And that's exactly what the anti-abortion folks don't want people to be paying attention to.
You know, that's what I found interesting, because Ted Cruz actually criticized Donald Trump over this from the right to say, you know, without really wading into the position Donald Trump took about punishment, that this just underscores what we've been saying, which is Donald Trump is not conservative. He doesn't even know what it means to be pro-life. And it kind of, then he actually walked right into that, Donald Trump, by, as you said, saying, well, we should keep the laws as they are. But it's interesting because at the same time, it doesn't seem like his past as being pro-choice, at least in the past having supported abortion, and saying that multiple times in prior interviews, that hasn't seemed to hurt him, though, among Republican primary voters, which I think is kind of fascinating, because the deal breaker for any other candidate, I think if it was anyone other than Donald Trump, like Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio, all these other candidates who dropped out, like Jeb Bush, they wouldn't be able to get away with defending Planned Parenthood or saying, yes, I once having supported.
And it's interesting because he hasn't gotten away with it with anti-abortion groups, for instance, who Concern Women for America, SBA List, all of the big conservative women's groups and anti-abortion groups have been actively campaigning against him in the primary. They've said that they can't endorse him in a general. They have held events, like they held an event in South Carolina before the primary called Anyone But Trump. And they hate him. But yeah, it hasn't seemed to hurt support among his base. And I think it's because people don't really care about his social issue positions. They just see him as someone who's going to build a big wall and protect. Like he said yesterday, he's like, women are still going to like me because I will protect them from terrorists. And I think among his group of supporters, that's actually a line that resonates, you know?
Right. And actually, you know, we'll take a short break, but I think that'll be an interesting thing to delve into is, you know, how much influence is the discussion over reproductive rights in both, you know, the Republican primary as well as moving into the general, you know, how much is it having in the conversation? Because that has great implications, I think, for tactics on both sides. Laura Basset's going to stay with us, so keep on watching The Bill Press Show. We'll be back after this break.
On your radio, on TV, and online, this is The Bill Press Show.
Taught him how to hit a baseball.
Just like that. Say hi.
How to hit a receiver. The strike zone. The net. You taught him how to hit the upper corner. You even taught him how to hit the open man. But how much time have you spent teaching him what not to hit?
Calls me googly eyes.
You know you're beautiful, right? You know that?
Even you are beautiful. I got bullied for wearing glasses. Share if you're against bullying.
We put it out there, just took off. 3 million people have shared this post. Don't let bullies get you down. I stand with you. Our whole family's wearing glasses. I wear glasses and I'm proud.
I even have the army on my team.
All the kind comments brought my child joy. I don't feel thank you is enough.
Next.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
I grew up in the housing projects of Cleveland. I didn't even know that life could be any better than it was. Education for me has been a way to get away from the agony of what was normal life. I want to be able to impact the community, not just look back on where I came from, but to reach back to where I came from and pull some people up with me. My name is David, and I am your dividend.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the Bill Press Show. We were talking to Laura Basset, a senior reporter for the Huffington Post, and you can follow on Twitter at Ellie Bassett. And Laura, we're discussing Donald Trump's controversial remarks on abortion. And he lost the Wisconsin primary last night by double digits to Ted Cruz. Now, I'm not saying this is just solely because of abortion comments, but that coupled with his campaign manager, Corey Lewandowski, being charged with battery against former Breitbart reporter Michelle Fields, it did seem like this actually had some kind of impact on him. At the same time, we were talking about how Republican primary voters had not shown themselves to be ranking abortion as a top issue, because you said before the break all these groups, pro-life groups, have actively campaigned against Donald Trump, and yet he's still the front runner. So if you're Democrats and you're watching this, they've used the War on Women playbook very successfully against Republicans in the past. Is there any concern that abortion won't be as much of a wedge issue in the general, or do they still feel pretty confident that voters will care, that they will really be able to use these comments against Donald Trump?
We're going to hear about the Donald Trump wants to punish women thing over and over and over. But I don't think it's just about abortion being an important issue. I think it's more about Donald Trump's relationship with women in general. Polls have been very bad for him lately. 74% of women, I think a CNN poll said last week, have an unfavorable view of Trump, and 39% of Republican women. And as we know from previous elections, you cannot win an election without women.
Right.
So I have to say, I was just down in South Carolina, and I was visiting my parents who still live there. And I was having this conversation with my mom, and she was saying that everybody in my parents' Sunday school class, because they still go to church all the time, all the men have sort of said, and when they're talking about it, they think they're going to vote for Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
But all of the wives have all said, we just can't. And these are normally loved, John McCain, Mitt Romney, Sarah Palin, but just cannot bring themselves to vote for
And
Donald
as you
Trump.
say, I think it is much more than abortion. He's had this adversarial relationship with women from the beginning. We all know the Megyn Kelly, feud that he has had, extremely sexist comments that he made about her and just women generally speaking. I was wondering because Ted Cruz has emerged as this alternative, which is bizarre because he's this establishment-backed sort of candidate now. But on when it comes to women's issues across the spectrum, sure, he hasn't said what Donald Trump has said, but I wouldn't view them as all that different in terms of. I'm sure Democrats will make the same case that Ted Cruz is just as bad as Donald Trump.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't even say just as bad. I think in some places, I think he's worse. Donald Trump at least will acknowledge, Planned Parenthood has some helpful health benefits for women, whereas Ted Cruz wants to completely zero out Planned Parenthood funding. I think Ted Cruz is just a better politician in that he is not going to come out and say Megyn Kelly is bleeding from her you-know-what. I mean, he's not going to rate women on the hot scale like Donald Trump is. So I don't think he's offended women in the same ways that Donald Trump has, but I think his policies are...
He knows what not to say.
Exactly. There was a very calculated move after Donald Trump said all the things that he did, where Ted Cruz had a little panel, and it was his mother, his wife, and Carly Fiorina, and it was all very, I love women.
Hey, women.
I love you, women.
Come on,
You're
women.
going to turn against Trump? Come right over here.
Yeah, it was very calculated.
Well,
but at the same time,
he plays like the Southern card a lot, the family values, the evangelical, and so the wife, like in his mind, the suburban mom he's going after.
Yeah.
Right.
Where the people you said who are reluctant, who are Republican primary voters, but they won't support Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Just because, as a woman, it is really difficult to imagine how you could go cast a ballot for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Right. And so I spoke with, I interviewed Penny Nance, the head of Concerned Women for America yesterday, the big, probably the biggest conservative Christian women's group. And she said, I wouldn't be surprised if women just stayed home. She was like, it's such a horrible choice. If it's between Trump and Hillary, it's such a horrible choice. She said, I wouldn't blame them for staying home.
And the question also becomes how many of them potentially vote for even Hillary Clinton.
Right.
Because there is a growing sentiment. Now, this is something that's not just among women, but even among just some Republicans. I know I've seen on the national security side who think Donald Trump would be catastrophic and Hillary Clinton's kind of hawkish. So they're like, you know what? We'd rather her be commander-in-chief and we don't want to risk it.
And I think she knows that. I saw her on, I believe it was The View yesterday, saying, someone asked her, can you be pro-life and feminist? And she said, absolutely you can. And then she said, Megyn Kelly is a fantastic journalist, and you can kind of see her starting to court conservative women because she sees that there's a gap.
Do you think that she, really quickly, before we go, runs the risk of upsetting her supporters?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Absolutely.
I totally agree with that.
There's so much more to talk about. I hate that we were out of time, but maybe that just means we're going to have you back. Laura Basset from the Huffington Post, thanks so much for joining us. We're taking a short break, but keep on watching The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.
The most important issue on this planet right now is to protect and conserve biodiversity in the world's oceans. And I don't think people realize just how intimate our connection is with the oceans themselves. Not only do they provide the very foundation of life and control our weather, but life just simply could not exist without a healthy ocean. The real problem, though, is apathy. It's all out of sight. It's all out of mind, and people don't even think about it. But it doesn't matter whether you live in Peoria or on the coast. The fact is, whatever happens in the ocean affects all life forms on the planet Earth. If the oceans die, then civilization collapses. We all die. We cannot live on this planet without the oceans. This is, in fact, not the planet Earth. It's the planet ocean, but because we're a land-dwelling species, we refer to it as Earth. But it is the planet ocean, and the oceans are the heart and the foundation of all life on the planet.
A single ember that escapes from a wildfire can travel more than a mile. That single ember can ignite and destroy your home or even your community. You can't control where that ember will land, only what happens when it does. Get Fire Adapted now at fireadapted.org.
Columbine.
Virginia Tech.
Tucson.
Aurora.
Fort Hood. Oak Creek. Newtown.
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 How many more?
How many more? How many more colleges?
How many more classrooms?
How many more movie theaters?
How many more houses of faith?
How many more shopping malls?
How many more street corners?
How many more?
How many more?
Enough.
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 Demand a plan.
Right now. As a mom.
As a dad. As a friend. As a husband.
As a wife.
As an American.
As an American.
As an American.
As a human being.
For the children of Sandy Hook.
Demand a plan. No more lists of names. It's not too soon.
It's too late.
Now is the time.
Before we all know someone who loved someone on that list.
No more lists.
No more.
Who they might have been. No more.
If we had just done something yesterday. It's time.
We can do better than this.
We can do better than this.
It's time.
It's time.
It's time for our leaders to act. Demand a plan. Right now.
Right now.
You! Demand it!
Enough.
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 He's not running for president, but he will shake hands and kiss babies. It's the Bill Press Show, your progressive headquarters for the 2016 election.
Welcome back to the Bill Press Show.
True, by the way. That liner is totally true.
It's true. Bill Press is not running for president, but he will shake hands and he will kiss babies. But I'm not Bill Press. I'm Sabrina Siddiqui. I'll kiss babies. I'm not sure I'll shake your hand.
Are you a germaphobe, Sabrina?
I was just going to say. No, I'll shake hands.
I just recently, like in the last couple of years, got over a whole germaphobe thing where I just did the fist bump. But I realized doing the fist bump is kind of a
douchey thing
to do now.
Yeah.
Like it's sort of a bro thing.
Bro,
so I do a high five or a good handshake.
Do an elbow bump.
See, the elbow bumps, I think, still like it's a little more personal.
I can't take someone seriously.
Chest bump. I can do chest bumps.
I do elbow bumps when I'm sick. I tell people, listen, I'm sick. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I just don't see people when I'm sick. I just tell them to get the hell away from me.
Huh, you tell me to come to work when I'm sick.
Well, on that note, I would love to welcome our final guest in studio. We always save the best for last.
Yeah.
Emma. What?
I said, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I was hyped. I was your hype man.
I don't know. You cut it out, though. You were like, yeah. It's a good finish. Okay.
That's all.
Emma Roller is a contributing op-ed writer for the New York Times Campaign Stops blog, whom you can follow on Twitter at Emma Roller, and, of course, her great work at nyt.com. Hey, Emma, how's it going?
Hey,
good to see you. I don't think you've been on with me before, which is fun.
I have not. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I'm excited, too, especially because we have a Wisconsin native.
Oh, yeah.
In the house.
Oh, yeah.
After all of our morning talking about last night's primary, we finally have someone who could really break it down, preferably in local accent.
Yeah, I was saying before I should just play up my accent. I'm not really sure how much it comes through. I feel like I've tried to sort of tone it down since
it's the A's.
leaving.
It's there a little bit.
A's.
It's there a little bit. Yeah, the A's.
I went to school in Chicago, so this was a thing there too, where you know, people in Illinois. It's a Midwestern thing in general, I think, for certain parts where you have the whole. I'm going to sound like I'm faking it because I'm not actually from there. So
no,
but it's like the accent.
I think some people sort of confuse the Minnesota extending the O
Oh, yeah, that's different.
Yeah, that's different. Yeah. It's more about the A's and the A's.
People in Minnesota just sound like Canadians. Like that's a separate.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I don't know what the connection is there. But speaking of Wisconsin, you've been following both primaries. And one of the themes we were going with during the show today is whether or not last night really changes the trajectory of the race. And it seems to be that the consensus is not so much on the Democratic side, but potentially on the Republican side in terms of paving the way for a contested convention. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think what last night shows is that it is definitely a great data point for both the Sanders campaign and the Cruz campaign to use going forward to try to build, momentum, that all-important but intangible thing we talk about in politics. But, and Sanders has won the past 7 of 8 primaries, which is really, pretty stunning. And he's shown that I think he's been able to break in a little bit with more diverse communities. We were talking before about Hillary Clinton won Milwaukee County, the largest county in Wisconsin, which is also much more diverse than the rest of the state. But she only won it by 4 points, right, Peter?
52 to 48
right.
was the final numbers there.
So I think that could show that maybe, some voters who maybe weren't familiar with Sanders are coming around to him now. On the Republican side, as we were talking about before, Cruz put up a really strong victory last night, especially in southeast Wisconsin. I don't want to talk about Waukesha County because it's become such a meme and it annoys the heck out of me.
I know.
But he put up really strong showings in the southeastern suburbs of Waukesha, Ozaukee County, and Washington County. But that is to say, the calendar going forward is not very friendly to him going into the Northeast, New York, Donald Trump's home state, of course, and also states like California, where there are a lot of delegates in play.
You had this piece that you had written about Donald Trump and the nice people of Wisconsin, and you did talk about, being a Wisconsinite yourself, and essentially how the more mild-mannered electorate was not a fit for Trump in his really brash brand of politics. How much do you think that played a role in his loss last night?
Yeah, so I don't want to oversimplify things too much or fall into Wisconsin stereotypes as a Wisconsinite myself, but I will say that we do tend to be pretty humble folk, and Wisconsin is also I think on average a little more educated and more religious than other states where Trump has won. And it's a lot like Iowa. Cruz spent a lot of time on the ground there. He set up his Camp Cruz there. But I think there is this allergy among people in my state. And also you saw conservative talk radio hosts like Charlie Sykes who really openly challenged Donald Trump and, for criticizing Heidi Cruz's looks. And, the Wisconsin conservative talk radio hosts have a pretty strong connection to the state's voters. And they all turned against Trump, unlike, at the national level, they're, Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity and Bill O'Reilly are seen as sort of going soft on Trump.
And you brought up the important point of education, because one of the data points we've seen consistently is that Donald Trump fares better with voters who do not have a college degree. Right. And then Ted Cruz now, and before, in fact, Marco Rubio, were faring better among those who did have a college degree. And, it was split a little more actually last night in terms, it wasn't quite an overwhelming number, at least in the early exit polls, of people who went to cast their vote. In Wisconsin did have a college degree. I think it was more like a 40 split along those lines, or 40-50. Yeah. But, now we're going into, as you said, New York, Pennsylvania. These are states where Ted Cruz could potentially struggle. But, like you said,
I don't even think Ted Cruz is going to spend a lot of time in New York. I mean, remember,
New York values.
New York values was a whole thing. I don't know how he shows up in New York and says that he wants their vote.
He's in the Bronx today, apparently.
Good luck with that.
One thing, the reason I brought that up is because, on the one hand, like you said,
Ted Cruz in the Bronx, man.
Ted Cruz in the Bronx.
That's should be a Spike.
I would totally watch that.
I would watch that.
I would watch that movie or show, whatever reality show. But the reason I brought it up is because, on the one hand, Ted Cruz is not a good fit per se for places like New York or Pennsylvania. But, sure, New York is Donald Trump's home state. They're tough-talking people. But at the same time, his whole brand up until now of just saying whatever he wants to say and coming up with outrageous proposals on immigration, that's not a good fit for New York either.
Right, and yeah, that's why.
Is this where he has to get more serious, is my question. If you're is this where Donald Trump has to get more serious?
Oh, man.
I mean,
I hope so.
Yeah.
That would be fun to watch.
I feel like I can never say never with those questions with Trump. Like, is he now going to actually start proposing real policies that exist in the world that the rest of us exist in?
It's a great way to put it.
He's apparently doing a series of policy talks.
Right. Which is, in my view, a sign that his campaign recognizes now we're going into, and I think maybe it's more to fend off the threat of like a John Kasich and not let people keep playing spoiler to him clinching delegates he needs. But, as I was saying, I mentioned earlier in the show that, one of his last-ditch efforts to kind of improve his standing on the morning of the Wisconsin primary was this proposal to cut off remittances for, immigrants who are living in the United States to Mexico, to convince Mexico to pay for this border wall. And I was thinking, I think we're past that stage in the primary. Like, I don't know who's left vote in terms of like the contest that we're gearing up into, who is like being driven by that issue.
Yeah, I think New York and California will be really interesting to watch in that respect, because they're two of the most diverse states in the country, and yet they are both states that Donald Trump could potentially win. And I think that just really speaks to the erosion of the Republican electorate and base.
I mean, so like, I don't want you to look too far down because I know it's a lot of speculation. But let's say he has a big win in New York.
That's all we do is speculate.
Yeah. No, I know. But
we're in the industry of speculation.
So let's say he has a big win in New York. He has another big win, let's say in like Pennsylvania. Does that sort of, because the narrative right now is Donald Trump is losing. This is slipping away from his grasp. What's it going to take for him to get back to like, okay, he's still the front runner?
Well, I think the media, to use that buzzword, is pretty harsh on Trump as is. And that hasn't stopped him from winning primaries in the past, and just sort of this slow march toward the convention. Meanwhile, I'm sure Reince Priebus is just like, this is fine. Everything is fine. It's all under control.
That's one of those talking points that really irks me. This idea that the media has not been tough on Trump.
Right.
But I mean, now there's a different question of the sheer amount of coverage the media has given, especially networks to Trump. But, these are not mutually exclusive. This is not so yes, it is true that he has benefited from so much more earned media than any other candidate. And that's a question that should be asked of
and there's a difference between giving someone $2 billion worth of earned media and just covering every one of your rallies live on CNN versus having critical coverage. I think, there's a distinction there.
And I would say I think the print media has certainly been far more critical in its coverage of Donald Trump from the beginning, and perhaps that's because it's not just a constant rolling of 24/7 talking heads. But on that note, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll keep on talking about the state of the race with Emma Roller. So stay tuned to the Bill Press Show. We'll be back after this break.
Your place to talk about the 2016 election. This is the Bill Press Show.
It occurred to me tonight, for the first time, that the long-winged insect that over and over again rams its body into the wood of my front door might not know what he's doing. He might not have a plan. Maybe that's just how he flies, and that is where the door is. And I remember you. The last time I saw you, a few weeks before we would graduate from high school, and a few days before you let a bullet dissolve on your tongue. dancing in a warehouse rave, sweat-drenched and strobe light battered, thrashing your arms back and thrusting them forward. The floor could get so bright and loud, we all slowed down to be more careful, but you kept dancing full sprint tornado, and sometimes you'd spin full weight into a wall and just spread your arms against it and sway back and forth like a lover reunited. This long-winged insect is not trying to get into the house. It doesn't know there is a house. Can't imagine a life beyond that door. All it can see is the light. You and I were both 17 when you died. And ever since then, I have envied you. How you are remembered for towering, unclaimed potential instead of living to look regret in the face. You didn't have to come home 3 weeks later and explain to your little brother why you took too much medicine. Your addiction is remembered as a tragedy, not a betrayal. Your suicide attempt became a suicide, not an unpaid hospital bill. And only tonight did it occur to me that maybe that night when you let your teeth touch metal, you might not have known what you were doing. You might not have had a plan. Maybe you had hit that door so many times you couldn't imagine it might let you through. I'm still ashamed to admit it, but I have always secretly believed you did it for me, that you wanted to show me that there is a way out of all of this. Not so that I would follow you, but so I would understand that every day that I am alive is a day that I choose to be alive. And when the music stops, you still get to keep on dancing. And when the light is so bright it blinds, you can dance with your eyes closed. And if in that dark you come up against a wall, you keep your arms out wide and you dance with the wall.
.com/TawkrTV. That's TAWKR-TV. This is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to The Bill Press Show. Before the break, we were talking with Emma Roller, who's a contributing op-ed writer for the New York Times' Campaign Stops blog. Does great work over there. And we were dissecting the Wisconsin primary, talking about the Republican side. I want to switch gears to the Democratic side for a moment because Bernie Sanders, we at the top of the show, we're discussing his big night. He also scored a significant victory over Hillary Clinton, at least in terms of percentage points. Now, the way delegate allocation works, he only, I think it was actually, we have the number right here where he, it wasn't that, it's not proportional, but he only wound up with 45 delegates to Clinton's 31. So he didn't do a great deal for him in the delegate count. But he, too, like Ted Cruz, will say, look, this changes the race significantly. Do you believe that that's the case?
Well, I think there is definitely a case to be made by Sanders and just like criticizing the delegate system. It just doesn't, I think it just doesn't make logical sense to say I won, X percent of the vote and like I won 60% of the vote. And yet I only got, 40% of the delegates or something. I'm just throwing out numbers there. So I think that is something he could just be criticizing sort of the system on, and he has. As far as where he goes from here, New York is obviously going to be a big battleground. I was actually hanging out with a friend who lives in Bushwick now, who is a huge Bernie Sanders supporter, and that's just sort of anecdotal data. But he was like wearing a jean jacket with this Bernie pin around the whole weekend, and like it was funny. So I haven't looked at the polls. Do you guys know like what New York's looking like?
Last time I checked, Hillary Clinton had a big lead over Bernie.
Yeah,
Sanders.
she had a double-digit lead.
She had a double-digit lead.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he said in his speech last night, We're headed to New York, and I know the state. I spent the first 18 years of my life in Brooklyn. But Hillary Clinton, that's her base, and that's where
Right.
her campaign headquarters are in Brooklyn. She was, of course, a senator
Right.
in New York. So I think, in terms of more recent ties, I mean, you've got the kind of the demographic you talked about, which is very specific of younger millennial voters.
Yeah.
And turnout's key. I mean, Bernie
it all
has
comes down to turnout.
Bernie has been able to successfully turn out.
Analysis.
Now, hashtag analysis. Bernie has been able to turn out. Having said that, in many of these states, large swaths of young voters.
And he's also shortened these gaps, like the double-digit lead that she has in New York. He's really trimmed those up in a lot of other states.
But like you said, it's
On
not
short
about
notice,
it's
too.
not about winning the primary because of the system. Now, for Democrats to remind folks, the issue is pledged delegates, which are based on the state primary results, versus superdelegates who can support any candidate that they want. And Hillary Clinton is so far ahead of Bernie Sanders in superdelegates, where she has 469 to his 31, and that's something that's unlikely to change, before the convention. And he keeps saying he wants to go to the convention floor.
Yeah.
How do you convince people, if you're Bernie Sanders, that they should abandon Hillary Clinton?
I mean, I think it becomes difficult as the spring and summer wears on if he doesn't, start to get any of. Obviously, she's ahead with pledged delegates. Sanders supporters have made the point to me before that superdelegates can change their mind, but it seems like a lot of them are locked into Clinton.
Right. That's kind of why I was thinking, what case would you make if you're him to get them to change their minds, other than to say, look, I've proven that she is not inevitable, and I've proven that she will have a tough time. I mean, that's what he does point to. He's a bit like Donald Trump. One page he's taken is to point to the polls, and he stands his rise. Like, the polls show that I beat Republicans. And so does Hillary Clinton, but I beat them by a wider margin. I would defeat Donald Trump, and I would defeat Ted Cruz, and she would have a tougher time, is the case, because she can't make, I think he argues, the same case on the issues that he thinks are driving Americans to the polls.
Right. It's
economic
inequality.
inequality.
It's just such a much more existential question on the Republican side of, like, can we even come close to winning if Donald Trump is the nominee, versus on the Democratic side, it's like, by what margin could we beat Donald Trump?
Right. And I think that's what, I think it's also been overstated how much crossover appeal Donald Trump would have in a general, because people were dealing with very small quantities of voters in these primaries overall. Now, there's been record turnout in some of these states, but that's still, only this fraction of a percentage of people who are going out to vote in these primaries. When people say, oh, well, independents and new voters, how many new voters is the big question. Now, some of that we don't have the data yet. Now, if it is proven that he has, in fact, brought in a large percentage of new voters, then maybe we can question whether that changes things in the general. But if it's still just such a small fraction of the electorate, when you move into general...
Yeah, when you talk about new voters, though, and Trump does have somewhat of a point to make in his ability to have turned out people who have never voted before, but a statistic that's stuck with me is that a Latino American voter turns 18 every 30 seconds in the U.S., and that is going to be like a big demographic
That should be
shift.
horrifying to Donald Trump.
And Republicans.
It's not
horrifying to Donald Trump because he doesn't care.
Right.
But it's horrifying to Republicans.
You're right.
But we have so much more we could have said. We have to just do this all over again. Emma Raw, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to take a break before wrapping up, so stay tuned for the Bill Press Show.
Follow us on Twitter @BP Show. This is the Bill Press Show.
We taught him how to hit a baseball. Just like that. Say hi! How to hit a receiver. The strike zone. The net. You taught him how to hit the upper corner. You even taught him how to hit the open man. much time have you spent teaching him what not to hit?
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
I grew up in the housing projects of Cleveland. I didn't even know that life could be any better than it was. Education for me has been a way to get away from the agony of what was normal life. I want to be able to impact the community, not just look back on where I came from, but to reach back to where I came from and pull some people up with me. My name is David, and I am your dividend.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Well, Peter.
Well, Sabrina.
We made it.
Well, not yet.
Not yet.
You've got about 30 seconds
I've got
left.
30 seconds to screw this entire thing up.
Thank you for coming in. It's a big day to have you in. The day after Wisconsin, Ted Cruz beating Donald Trump, and Bernie Sanders beating Hillary Clinton in Wisconsin. It's nice to have you here.
Thanks for recapping that for us.
I'm a
Just
producer.
in case you forgot.
I produce.
I once said I'm a writer. I know words.
Yeah.
This is how it works,
Doesn't
right?
have as much zing to it, but uh-oh.
Oh, damn. Whoa.
All right, well, Jesse.
Heat check.
I just got a icy cold glare.
That was cold as ice.
Through the glass, I
Ice
felt
cold.
it.
Damn.
So I enjoyed this show very much and enjoyed being around most of you.
Sabrina, you did a great job.
Wonderful job. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, guys. Keep watching The Bill Press Show.
This is the Bill Press Show.